The sound came first, metal on metal, precise and rhythmic, echoing through the pre-dawn silence of Fort Liberty's weapons depot. Maya Crane had been awake for 2 hours already, but the official day wouldn't start for another 43 minutes. That gave her time. Time to work in the quiet, time to breathe without anyone watching, time to forget, if only for a moment, the weight of everything she carried. Her hands moved across the M4 carbine with the kind of familiarity that came from touching the same weapon system 10,000 times. Oil on her fingers, smell of gun solvent in her nose, the soft click of components sliding into place. She didn't need light for this. Muscle memory guided her through disassembly, inspection, cleaning, reassembly. 47 seconds from start to finish. She'd timed it once, years ago, when timing still mattered. Now nothing mattered except the work. The scar tissue on her right shoulder pulled tight as she reached for the next rifle. 3 years since Raqqa, and the shrapnel wound still ached in cold weather. North Carolina wasn't supposed to be cold in September, but her body didn't care about geography. Pain had its own calendar, its own time zone, its own cruel sense of timing. She touched the challenge coin in her left cargo pocket. Ritual, every morning, same motion, fingers finding the worn edges, tracing the eagle and trident that had faded from years of handling. On one side, Team 4. On the other, a name worn smooth. She didn't need to look at it to know what it said. Tyler Sullivan, Hawk, her teammate, her brother, dead 3 years in a compound half a world away. Except he wasn't dead, not according to the dreams. Maya shook her head, forcing the thought away. Dreams were lies, the mind told itself. Hawk was gone. She'd watched him fall, watched the building collapse, watched the smoke swallow everything she loved about being a warrior. The dreams were just her brain's way of processing grief, nothing more. The door to the depot opened behind her. She didn't turn. Only 2 people had keys, and one of them was still asleep in the bachelor officer quarters. Morning, kiddo. The voice belonged to Colonel Thomas Matheson, retired SEAL, Gulf War and Iraq War veteran, and the only person in the world who still called her kiddo. He was 62 years old, walked with a cane from shrapnel that had torn through his knee in Fallujah back in 2004, and had saved Maya's life more times than either of them could count. Most of those times, she'd been 8 years old and drowning in grief after her father died in Kandahar. Bull, as everyone called him, had been her father's best friend. When the Navy delivered the folded flag to Maya's mother, Bull had been standing right there. And when Maya's mother couldn't handle raising a child alone and disappeared into a bottle of vodka that never seemed to empty, Bull had been there too. He'd taken custody when Maya was 9, raised her like his own, taught her everything her father would have taught her if he'd lived, including how to be a SEAL. Couldn't sleep? Bull asked, settling onto the worn wooden stool near her workbench. He moved carefully, favoring the bad knee, always worse in the mornings. Dreams, Maya said. One word, that was all Bull needed. Raqqa? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Bull was quiet for a moment, then, your father used to have them too, after missions. He'd wake up swinging, thinking he was still in the fight. Your mom never understood it, but I did. We all did. Maya's hands never stopped moving. Barrel inspection, bolt carrier group, firing pin, check for wear patterns, stress fractures, anything that might cause a malfunction. Because somewhere, some soldier's life might depend on this weapon working perfectly. And if it failed, that was on her. You know what your father would say if he could see you now? Bull asked. Maya said nothing. He'd say you've done your duty, 3 times over, 9 deployments, Navy Cross, 3 Purple Hearts. You've given everything to this country. It's okay to rest now. I am resting, Maya said quietly. This is what resting looks like for people like us. Bull made a sound that might have been agreement or argument. With him, it was hard to tell. He reached into his jacket and pulled out 2 paper cups of coffee, still steaming. Set one on her workbench without comment. She accepted it with a nod. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky outside began to lighten. Gray first, then purple, then that particular shade of orange that meant the sun was coming, whether anyone was ready or not. Maya had watched dawn break in 23 different countries. Some of those dawns had been beautiful. Some had been terrible. All of them had changed her in ways she was still trying to understand. You've been here 4 years now, Bull said eventually, hiding in a weapons depot, pretending to be someone you're not. I'm not pretending, Maya said. I'm a maintenance technician. That's what my contract says. That's what I do. You're a senior chief, SEAL Team 4, one of the finest warriors this country has ever produced. And you're wasting away in a job that any kid fresh out of basic could handle. Maya's jaw tightened. This job matters. Every weapon that leaves this depot has to be perfect, because some 19-year-old kid is going to carry it into combat, and if it fails, he dies. That matters to me. I know it does, Bull said gently. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Bull took a long drink of his coffee. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made Maya finally look up from her work. I'm saying that you can't hide forever. I'm saying that your father didn't raise you to be invisible. And I'm saying that whether you like it or not, today is the day that changes. Maya searched his face. Bull Matheson was not a man given to drama. If he said something was going to happen, it meant he'd already set wheels in motion. What did you do? Nothing yet, Bull said. But I will, because you need this. You need to remember who you are before you forget completely. Before Maya could respond, the depot door opened again. This time it was Sarah Chen, the supply sergeant who'd been Maya's friend for 21 years. They'd served together in different capacities, Sarah in logistics, Maya in places that didn't officially exist. But friendship didn't care about classifications or clearance levels. Thought I'd find you two here, Sarah said, carrying a paper bag that smelled like breakfast sandwiches. You know, normal people sleep past 05:30. We're not normal people, Bull said, accepting a sandwich with a grateful nod. Clearly. Sarah handed one to Maya, then hopped up on the workbench. So, big day today. Maya unwrapped the sandwich. Egg, cheese, bacon. Sarah knew her preferences. What makes today big? New Ranger unit rotating through. Staff Sergeant Marcus Vance and his crew. Word is they're deploying to Syria in 6 weeks, and they need weapons qual before they go. The name Marcus Vance meant nothing to Maya. Just another instructor with another batch of trainees who needed to prove they could hit targets at regulation distances. She'd processed hundreds of them over the years. They all blurred together after a while. Also, Sarah continued, watching Maya's face carefully, Colonel Mitchell is doing his quarterly inspection. Full dog and pony show. Probably going to have 100 people on the range by 0800. Great, Maya said without enthusiasm. Crowds meant noise. Noise meant attention. Attention was the last thing she wanted. Bull was studying her with that look he got sometimes. The one that said he could see straight through her carefully constructed walls. You going to be okay today? I'm always okay, Maya lied. Liar, Bull said affectionately. But I love you anyway. Sarah checked her watch. I've got to run. Inventory meeting at 06:15. Maya, you need anything before the chaos starts? Just peace and quiet. Fresh out of that, Sarah said with a sympathetic smile. But I've got paperwork and terrible coffee if you change your mind. She hopped down, squeezed Maya's shoulder once, and left. The depot fell quiet again. Just Maya and Bull and the slowly brightening day. Bull, Maya said carefully. What's really going on? You're acting weird. I'm always weird, he said. It's part of my charm. Bull, he sighed, set down his coffee, looked at her with those pale blue eyes that had seen too many wars and lost too many friends. You remember what I told you when you graduated buds? When they pinned that trident on your uniform? Maya remembered. Of course she remembered. It had been one of the proudest moments of her life. Bull had been there, standing tall despite the cane, tears streaming down his weathered face. He'd pulled her aside afterward, pressed the challenge coin into her palm, and said 7 words that had carried her through 9 deployments. The easy days are over, Maya quoted softly, but that's when we do our best work. That's right, Bull said. And kiddo, I'm here to tell you something. Your easy days, they're about to be over, again. Before Maya could ask what he meant, the depot door burst open. A young soldier, couldn't have been more than 24, stumbled in with wide eyes and breathing hard. Ma'am, he saw her technician's uniform, recalculated. Miss, there's a problem on the range. Staff Sergeant Vance is asking for weapons, and the armorer says they're not ready, and he's really angry. Maya glanced at the wall clock, 0648. The range didn't officially open until 0700. Tell Staff Sergeant Vance that weapons distribution begins at 0700, not before. The young soldier looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. I tried to tell him that, but he said he doesn't take orders from support staff and that if the weapons aren't ready, it's because someone is incompetent and he needs to speak to whoever's in charge. Bull made a noise in his throat. Maya knew that sound. It meant trouble was coming. I'll handle it, Maya said, standing. Her right leg protested, the old Raqqa injury making itself known. She ignored it. Pain was just information. You could acknowledge it without letting it control you. Want me to come? Bull asked. No, Maya said. You're retired, remember? This is my job. Your job is maintaining weapons, Bull said, not managing entitled instructors who think the rules don't apply to them. It's all the same job in the end, Maya said. She followed the young soldier toward the range, Bull's words echoing in her head. The easy days are about to be over. She had no idea how right he was. The weapons qualification range at Fort Liberty sprawled across 15 acres of North Carolina, red clay and concrete. 8 firing lanes, each 100 meters long, with pop-up targets programmed to simulate combat scenarios. This morning, the range was already crowded. 97 personnel, according to Maya's quick count. Army Rangers in their tan berets, a handful of Marines there for inter-service cooperation training, support staff, officers, and in the center of it all, Staff Sergeant Marcus Vance. He was 34 years old, 6 feet 2 inches of muscle and anger wrapped in a perfectly pressed uniform. Ranger tab on his shoulder, combat infantryman badge on his chest. Maya noted the combat patch, the one that indicated deployment to a combat zone. Iraq, probably, based on his age. 2 deployments, maybe 3. The kind of soldier who'd seen enough action to be dangerous but not enough to be wise. He was yelling at Caleb Turner, the unit armorer, when Maya arrived. Caleb was 28, competent enough at his job but prone to cutting corners. Maya had flagged 3 of his weapons inspections in the past month. He hadn't been happy about it. I don't care what your checklist says, Marcus was saying, voice pitched to carry across the entire range. My Rangers need weapons and they need them now, not in 12 minutes. Now. Sir, I don't have authority to release weapons before 0700. That's regulations. Regulations, Marcus spat the word like it tasted bad. You know what regulations get you in combat? Killed, dead, buried. Now give me the damn weapons. Maya approached slowly, keeping her movements casual and non-threatening. This was the part of the job nobody warned you about. Managing egos, diffusing situations that shouldn't exist in the first place. She'd faced down enemy combatants in 3 countries. Somehow dealing with entitled instructors felt more exhausting. Staff Sergeant, she said quietly. I'm Maya Crane, Depot Maintenance. Is there a problem? Marcus turned to look at her. His eyes swept over her oil-stained uniform, her messy ponytail, her technician's cap. She watched him categorize her in real time. Support staff, non-combat, irrelevant. His face shifted from anger to dismissal in half a second. The problem, he said slowly, like he was talking to a child, is that my unit has a training schedule, and that schedule requires weapons at 0630, not 0700. Your armorer here doesn't seem to understand that my training takes priority over his convenience. The weapons will be ready at 0700, Maya said, as scheduled. I need them now. I understand that, Staff Sergeant. But regulations exist for safety. We have procedures. Marcus stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. Maya had seen this move before. From better men than him. She didn't step back. Let me explain something to you, Marcus said, voice dropping to that dangerous quiet that angry men use when they think volume equals authority. I'm deploying to Syria in 6 weeks. My Rangers need to qualify. Every minute we waste here is a minute they're not training. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Give me the weapons. Maya met his eyes, held them. And I'm going to tell you one more time, Staff Sergeant. 0700, 12 minutes. For a moment, she thought he might back down. Then his hand moved, fast, palm open. The slap echoed across the range like a gunshot. Maya's head snapped to the side. Pain bloomed across her cheek, bright and sharp. She tasted blood where her teeth had cut the inside of her mouth. Her technician's cap flew off, rolled across the concrete, came to rest against an ammunition crate. 97 pairs of eyes turned to watch. The range fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Maya stood very still, breathing slowly through her nose, counting to 10 in her head. This wasn't the first time someone had hit her. It probably wouldn't be the last. But every time it happened, she had to make a choice. Fight back or let it go. Escalate or de-escalate. Prove who she was or maintain the cover that kept her safe. She chose the cover. Slowly, carefully, Maya bent down and picked up her cap, dusted it off, placed it back on her head. The whole time she said nothing, just quietly, methodically went through the motions of collecting herself. Can't talk? Marcus laughed, turned to his rangers. See this? This is why women don't belong here. Can't even clean a rifle properly, and when you call them on it, they freeze up like scared rabbits. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not from everyone. Maya noticed several faces that looked uncomfortable, ashamed even. But enough people laughed, enough that Marcus felt validated, enough that he'd do it again. Maya walked back toward the weapons depot without a word. Her face burned. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Every step required conscious effort. Her body wanted to turn around, wanted to show Marcus Vance exactly what a SEAL Team 4 operator could do to an overconfident Ranger instructor. Wanted to put him on the ground in under 2 seconds and make him understand that rank and size meant nothing compared to skill. But that would expose her, and she wasn't ready to be exposed. Not yet. In the far corner of the range, Master Sergeant Daniel Reeves watched the entire exchange with narrowed eyes. He was 45 years old, 27 years in service, and had trained alongside SEALs during his time in Iraq. He knew how operators moved, how they stood, how they held their center of gravity. And the way Maya Crane had just absorbed that slap, the way she'd maintained perfect balance even with her head snapped to the side, the way her hands had stayed loose and ready at her sides instead of going up defensive. That was operator-level body control. Did you see that? He asked Command Sergeant Major Thomas Bradford, who stood beside him. I saw Vance assault a civilian employee, Bradford said quietly. His voice carried the weight of 50 years of life and 32 years in uniform. I saw him laugh about it. That's not what I mean, Daniel said. Watch how she walks. That's not fear, that's control. Bradford studied Maya's retreating form. You think she's got training? I think, Daniel said carefully, that woman is more dangerous than everyone on this range combined. And I think Vance just made the biggest mistake of his career. Maya made it back to the depot before her hands started shaking. Adrenaline dump, natural physiological response to violence. She'd learned about this in her first week of BODES training. Your body doesn't distinguish between real threats and ego-driven attacks. It just floods your system with chemicals and leaves you to deal with the aftermath. She sat down on her workbench, breathed, counted, waited for the shaking to stop. The door opened. She expected Bull, got Sarah instead. I heard, Sarah said softly. Half the base heard. Are you okay? Fine, Maya said. The lie tasted like copper and shame. Sarah didn't buy it. She crossed the depot, gently turned Maya's face toward the light, examined the swelling that was already starting to form. That bastard, you should report him. For what, being an asshole? For assault, Maya, he hit you. He slapped me. There's a difference. The hell there is, Sarah said fiercely. You're a civilian contractor. He's active duty. That's assault. That's illegal. That's court-martial material. Maya pulled away gently. He has friends, connections. Men like Vance always do. Filing a report just makes my life harder. So you're just going to let him get away with it? I'm going to do my job, Maya said. Same as always. Sarah studied her for a long moment, then quieter. You could stop him, couldn't you? If you wanted to. I've seen you move. I've seen how you handle yourself. You could put him on the ground before he knew what hit him. Maya said nothing. But you won't, Sarah continued, because that would mean revealing who you really are. And you're not ready for that. I don't know what you're talking about, Maya said. Yes, you do, Sarah said. I've known you for 21 years, Maya. I know there's more to your story than maintenance tech. I don't know what exactly, but I know. And I know you're hiding. I just wish I knew why. Before Maya could respond, Bull appeared in the doorway. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard as flint. Marcus Vance, he said without preamble. Where is he? Bull, don't. Where is he, Maya? Still on the range, probably, but Bull, you can't. You're retired. You have no authority here. I have all the authority I need, Bull said. I'm your father. That gives me the right to defend you. Adoptive father, Maya said, and I don't need defending. I need this to go away quietly. Bull crossed the room, sat down beside her, took her face in his hands and examined the swelling with the careful attention of a man who'd seen too many injuries to count. When he spoke again, his voice was soft but absolutely certain. Your real father, my best friend, made me promise something before he deployed to Kandahar. He said, Bull, if anything happens to me, you look after my little girl. You protect her. You teach her to protect herself. And you never, ever let anyone make her feel small. I kept that promise when you were 8 years old and scared and alone, and I'm keeping it now. This isn't the same thing, Maya said. It's exactly the same thing, Bull said. You're hiding who you are because you think being invisible keeps you safe. But it doesn't, kiddo. It just makes you a target for men like Vance. Men who think power means they can do whatever they want to whoever they want. What are you going to do? Maya asked, even though she was afraid of the answer. Bull stood, adjusted his cane, smiled that particular smile that had terrified enemy combatants in 2 separate wars. I'm going to remind Staff Sergeant Vance that some women are more dangerous than he can possibly imagine, and I'm going to do it in a way that forces you to remember who you are. Bull, please. The easy days are over, Maya, Bull said. They've been over for a while. You've just been pretending otherwise. Time to stop pretending. He left before she could argue further. Sarah watched him go, then turned back to Maya. He's going to blow your cover, isn't he? Maya touched her challenge coin, felt the familiar edges. Yeah, I think he is. Are you ready for that? Maya thought about the question. Thought about 3 years of hiding. 3 years of pretending to be someone she wasn't. 3 years of maintaining weapons instead of carrying them. 3 years of being invisible while her skills atrophied and her purpose faded and her identity became a ghost story she told herself late at night. No, she said honestly, but I don't think Bull cares if I'm ready. At 0700 exactly, Maya returned to the range to distribute weapons. The crowd had grown, over 100 people now. Marcus Vance stood in the center, surrounded by his rangers, holding court like a king. He saw her approaching and his smile turned predatory. Look who came back, he announced. Little Miss Regulation follower, ready to do your job now? Maya said nothing, just approached the weapons rack and began the inspection process. Each rifle had to be checked. Chamber clear, barrel unobstructed, bolt carrier group properly lubricated, firing pin within tolerance. She'd done this inspection 10,000 times, could do it in her sleep, could do it while people yelled at her and laughed at her and treated her like she was invisible. She picked up the first M4, pulled the charging handle, peered into the chamber, frowned. Problem? Caleb Turner asked. He'd been the one to prep these weapons. If there was an issue, it reflected badly on him. Maya didn't answer immediately. She removed the bolt carrier group, examined the firing pin under the depot's harsh fluorescent work light, measured it mentally against the specifications she'd memorized years ago. The pin showed asymmetric wear, 0.3 millimeters of deviation on the tip, not enough to cause immediate failure, but under sustained fire, under combat conditions, that pin would fracture. Maybe not in the first 100 rounds, but eventually. And when it did, some soldier would be standing in a firefight with a weapon that wouldn't fire. This firing pin has irregular wear, Maya said quietly. It needs to be replaced. Caleb's face reddened. That's within acceptable tolerances. I checked it myself. Acceptable for training, Maya said, not acceptable for combat deployment. She looked at Marcus. Staff Sergeant Vance mentioned his unit is deploying to Syria in 6 weeks. This weapon will fail them when they need it most. The range went quiet. Everyone understood what she was saying. A failed weapon in combat meant death. Marcus stepped forward. How do you know about our deployment? Maya blinked. You announced it yourself this morning. 0643 to 30 trainees. Sound carries on an open range. Sound carries, Marcus mimicked, voice dripping with mockery. He turned to his audience again, playing for laughs. Listen to this. The cleaning lady has opinions about combat deployments now. Tell me, sweetheart, how many deployments have you been on? 9, Maya thought. 9 combat deployments across 4 countries. 347 days of sustained combat operations. 62 confirmed kills. 1 Navy Cross, 3 Purple Hearts. None, she said out loud. I'm just support staff. Exactly, Marcus said. So maybe you should stick to what you know, which is following regulations and staying out of the way while real soldiers do real work. Captain Hugo Mercer appeared from the administrative building. He was the training officer responsible for smooth operations on the range. Everything about him screamed bureaucrat. Pressed uniform, polished boots, expression of professional neutrality that never wavered no matter what chaos erupted around him. What's the holdup, he asked. Marcus straightened. Sir, this technician is refusing to release properly inspected weapons. She's overstepping her authority and delaying the training schedule. Mercer's gaze swept over Maya, dismissed her in a single glance. You're here to maintain and distribute equipment as directed. Do your job and let the professionals handle the tactical decisions. Yes, sir, Maya said automatically. The words came from somewhere deep in her training. When an officer gives you an order, you respond. Even if the order is stupid, even if following it might get someone killed. She distributed the weapons, including the one with the faulty firing pin. Watched Marcus take it with a triumphant smirk. Watched him hand it to a young ranger who couldn't have been more than 22 years old. Watched that kid shoulder the weapon and head toward the firing line, completely unaware that he was holding something that might fail when he needed it most. Sergeant Fern Delgado watched from the supply depot doorway. She was 38, 12 years in service, and had a talent for reading people. What she saw in Maya's posture didn't match the submissive words. There was a coiled tension there, a readiness, the kind of readiness that came from expecting the world to go sideways at any moment. Fern had seen that posture before, in Iraq, in soldiers who'd survived too many firefights and learned that relaxation was just another word for dead. She approached Maya as the crowd began to disperse toward the firing lanes. Hey, you okay? Maya looked up. For just a moment, something human flickered behind her carefully neutral expression. I'm fine, Sergeant Delgado. Fern, she said, we've been over this, and you don't look fine. I'm a tech, Maya said. Fine is the only setting I have. Fern studied her, the swollen cheek, the careful way she held herself, the eyes that tracked every movement on the range, even while her hands worked on weapons inspection. You should report him, what he did. That was assault. He has protection, Maya said, friends in high places. I've seen his type before. They always land on their feet. And people like us just take it? People like us survive, Maya said. That's all we can do. Fern wanted to argue, wanted to say that there were regulations, procedures, ways to make this right. But she'd been in the Army long enough to know that regulations and justice weren't always the same thing. Sometimes the system protected the wrong people. Sometimes the only choice was to put your head down and survive until you could get somewhere safer. The morning progressed with grinding efficiency. Trainees cycled through the qualification lanes in groups of 8. Rifle reports created a steady rhythm that echoed off concrete barriers. Maya worked in the background, invisible to most, essential to all. She cleared jammed weapons, replaced worn components, ensured that every trainee who stepped up to the line had a functioning rifle in their hands. Her movements were efficient, almost choreographed. Each motion flowed into the next with a precision that looked unconscious, but was actually the result of thousands of hours of practice. At Lane 7, Corporal Connor Walsh stood with his hands trembling so badly the M4 shook in his grip. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the morning's cool air. His breathing came in short, sharp gasps that had nothing to do with physical exertion. Maya noticed. Of course she noticed. She'd been watching him for weeks, seen the signs. PTSD didn't always look like violence or nightmares. Sometimes it looked like a 23-year-old corporal who couldn't hold a weapon steady because his brain was back in Kandahar watching his best friend die. She set down the rifle she was cleaning and approached his station quietly. So quiet he didn't hear her until she spoke. Square your shoulders. Connor flinched, nearly dropped the weapon. Easy, Maya said, voice low and meant only for him. Keep your finger indexed along the receiver. Good. Now take a breath. Hold it. Let half out. His breathing steadied almost against his will. The target isn't the enemy, Maya continued, adjusting his elbow position with a gentle touch. It's just a piece of paper. Paper can't hurt you. How did you... Connor couldn't finish the question. I've seen that look before, Maya said. You're not alone, Corporal, and it doesn't make you weak. Before he could respond, Marcus Vance's voice cut across the range. What the hell do you think you're doing? Maya turned to face him, expression neutral. His sight alignment was off, she said simply. His sight alignment is my concern, Marcus said, stepping into her personal space, using his height like a weapon. You touch one of my trainees again, and I'll have you scrubbing latrines for a month. Matter of fact, I think you owe Private Webb over there an apology. He's been waiting 15 minutes for his weapon because you're too busy playing instructor. Logan Pierce appeared at Marcus's shoulder. He was 22, a private first class with more ego than sense, and desperately wanted to impress his superiors. Maybe she needs a reminder of where she belongs, he said, shoving a cart of empty magazines toward Maya. The cart hit her hip hard. Maya stumbled, but it wasn't a normal stumble. Her foot slid back in a lateral pivot. Her weight redistributed with fluid grace. Her balance recovered in a fraction of a second. The whole sequence took maybe half a second. Master Sergeant Daniel Reeves saw it from 30 yards away. His coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. That wasn't a stumble recovery. That was a trained response. Specific, deliberate. The kind of thing they drilled into you until it became reflex. He'd seen that exact movement in one place. Coronado, the place where they made seals. Oops, Logan said, not even bothering to pretend it was an accident. Maya said nothing. She simply righted the cart and began organizing the scattered magazines with methodical precision. Across the training yard, Lieutenant Chloe Reeves was conducting medical checks on personnel rotating through the evaluation. She was 32, 8 years in service, and had sharp eyes that missed very little. When Maya passed her station to retrieve a replacement barrel, something caught her attention. The technician's sleeve had ridden up, exposing her forearm. Scars. Not the neat surgical kind from medical procedures. These were rough, patterned. The distinctive marks left by high-velocity shrapnel. Chloe had seen enough combat injuries during her deployment to Kandahar to recognize them instantly. Those weren't maintenance accidents, those were war wounds. She made a mental note to pull Maya's medical records when she got back to her office. Something about this woman didn't add up. The morning's first crisis came at 11:47. A trainee at Lane 3, barely 19 and green as grass, somehow managed to load a round while his weapon was pointed away from the range. The discharge was deafening. The bullet punched through the ceiling of the covered firing station and sent chunks of concrete raining down. Panic rippled through the trainees. Instructors shouted contradictory orders. The young soldier stood frozen, weapon still in his trembling hands, barrel sweeping dangerously across the crowded range. Maya moved. She covered the 15 feet between her station and Lane 3 in under 2 seconds. Her hand closed over the rifle's barrel, pushing it toward the ground, while her other hand found the magazine release. The magazine dropped. Her palm slapped the bolt catch, locking the action open. She cleared the chamber by touch, her eyes never leaving the terrified trainee's face. "You're okay," Maya said. Her voice was calm, steady, the eye of the storm. "Weapon safe. Everyone's safe. Breathe." The whole sequence had taken less than 5 seconds. Daniel Reeves set down his coffee cup very carefully. Beside him, Command Sergeant Major Thomas Bradford had gone very still. "Isaac," Bradford said, using Daniel's first name. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Did you see that?" "I saw it. That wasn't basic training. That wasn't even advanced training." "I know. That was operator-level response time, instinct, muscle memory." Bradford turned to look at the small woman now helping the shaken trainee sit down on a nearby bench. "Who the hell is she?" Daniel had no answer, but he intended to find out. Marcus Vance, however, saw only an opportunity to reassert dominance. He stormed across the range, face purple with rage. "Who gave you permission to touch that trainee? Who gave you permission to handle a weapon malfunction? You're a technician. You maintain equipment. That's all you are." Maya straightened to face him. The weapon was pointed at 34 people, including 3 officers and the base commander. For the first time, Marcus registered that Colonel James Mitchell had been watching from the observation platform. The colonel's face was unreadable, but his presence added weight to the moment. "I don't care if it was pointed at the president," Marcus said, voice dropping to a dangerous hiss. "You do not step outside your lane, ever, am I clear?" "Crystal clear, Staff Sergeant." The words were compliant. The tone was not, and everyone within earshot heard the difference. Maya returned to her workstation, her movements unhurried, professional, completely unconcerned with the fury radiating from the man standing over her. "This is it," she thought. "This is when Bull makes his move." She was right. Colonel Bull Matheson emerged from the command building at exactly noon. He'd been watching everything from inside, waiting for the right moment. Now he walked slowly across the training yard, cane tapping against concrete, moving with the deliberate pace of a man who'd earned the right to take his time. Every eye turned to watch him, because even retired, even walking with a cane, Bull Matheson commanded attention. Navy Cross, 2 Silver Stars, Bronze Star with Valor, 2 tours Gulf War, 3 tours Iraq War, Fallujah Survivor, Legend. He walked straight to Maya's workstation, looked at her swollen face, looked at the crowd gathered around Marcus Vance, looked at the weapons racks and the trainees and the officers watching from their observation posts. Then he turned to face the assembled personnel and spoke in a voice that had once commanded men in combat and still carried absolute authority. "My name is Colonel Thomas Matheson, SEAL Team 2, retired. For those of you who don't know me, I had the honor of serving with some of the finest warriors this country has ever produced. Men who gave everything for this nation. Men who understood that service means sacrifice. He paused. Let the words settle. I also had the honor of raising Maya Crane. Not by blood, but by choice. Her father was my best friend. When he died in Kandahar in 2004, I made him a promise. I promised to protect his daughter, to teach her, to help her become someone he'd be proud of. Bull's voice grew harder, colder. What I'm watching today is a disgrace to his memory and to every value this uniform represents. I'm watching a staff sergeant assault a civilian employee. I'm watching him mock her, intimidate her, uses his rank and his size to make her feel small. Marcus had gone pale. But here's what that staff sergeant doesn't know, Bull continued. Here's what most of you don't know. He turned to Maya. Show them, kiddo. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for the collar of her shirt. For 3 years, she'd kept this hidden. 3 years of invisibility. 3 years of safety. The easy days are over. She pulled the fabric aside, exposing her right shoulder. The tattoo gleamed in the harsh sunlight. A golden eagle, wings spread wide, clutching a trident in one talon and a flintlock pistol in the other. Surrounded by an anchor. Below it, in stark black letters, Team 4. The Trident, the symbol of the Navy SEALs, the most elite special operations force in the world. The range fell silent, absolutely, completely silent. Bull's voice carried across that silence like a judgment. Senior Chief Maya Crane, SEAL Team 4, 9 combat deployments, 47 confirmed operations, Bronze Star with Valor, Silver Star, Navy Cross, 3 Purple Hearts. Each word landed like a hammer blow. Operation Serpent Dawn, Raqqa, 2019. She held a defensive position for 9 hours with a collapsed lung and shrapnel wounds through her shoulder and leg. Killed 23 enemy combatants. Saved 12 American lives. All while bleeding out and waiting for extraction that almost didn't come. Maya closed her eyes. She didn't want to remember Raqqa. Didn't want to see Hawk's face. Didn't want to hear the building collapse or feel the blood filling her lungs or remember the 9 hours of holding that position, because if she broke, if she ran, her teammates would die. The only reason you haven't heard her name, Bull continued, is because everything about that operation is classified above your clearance level. But I'm telling you now, Maya Crane is a hero, a warrior, one of the finest this nation has ever produced. He turned to Marcus, looked him in the eye. And you had the audacity to strike her. Marcus made a sound. It might have been words. It might have been a sip. Bull wasn't finished. Her father was Lieutenant Commander James Crane, SEAL Team 3, killed in action Kandahar, Navy Cross. When he died, I took custody of his 8-year-old daughter, raised her like my own, taught her everything I knew, watched her become someone he would be proud of. He stepped closer to Marcus, close enough that only those nearby could hear his next words. You put your hands on my daughter, Staff Sergeant. You humiliated her in front of 100 witnesses. You made her feel small, and she let you. Not because she was weak, but because she's stronger than you'll ever understand. Strong enough to choose restraint over violence. Strong enough to protect you from what she could do. Bull's voice rose again, addressing the crowd. Senior Chief Crane could have put Staff Sergeant Vance in the hospital. She could have broken bones, ended his career, destroyed him. Instead, she walked away. Because that's what real warriors do. They choose when and where to fight. They don't waste violence on people who aren't worth it. Logan Pierce sat down heavily. His face had gone the color of old paper. Daniel Reeves stood at attention and rendered a salute so sharp it could cut glass. One by one, every soldier in sight followed his lead. Trainees, instructors, officers, support staff. They rose to their feet and saluted the small woman standing alone by the workbench. Maya's eyes were wet. She didn't want this. Didn't want the attention or the recognition or the weight of everyone knowing who she was. But it was too late now. The secret was out. The cover was blown. The easy days were over. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and the resistance and the desperate desire to stay hidden, Maya felt something else. Something she'd thought was dead. Relief. Bull turned back to her, smiled that gentle smile that was just for her. I love you, kiddo, and I'm sorry, but you needed this. You needed to remember. Maya nodded. Couldn't speak, just nodded. Marcus Vance stood frozen. His career was over. Everyone knew it. He'd assaulted a decorated war hero, a Navy Cross recipient, a woman who'd given everything for this country. No amount of connections or friends in high places could save him from that. Staff Sergeant Vance, Colonel Mitchell said from the observation platform. His voice was ice. Report to my office, now. Marcus stumbled away. Logan Pierce followed, moving like a man in a nightmare. The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly, as if leaving the scene of something sacred. Bull put his hand on Maya's shoulder. You okay? No, Maya said honestly, but I will be. That's all any of us can ask for, Bull said. Then quieter. There's something else, kiddo. Something I need to tell you, but not here, not now, tonight, when you're ready. Maya looked at him, saw something in his eyes, something that made her chest tight. Bull, what is it? Tonight, he repeated. I promise, for now, just breathe. You did good today. I didn't do anything, Maya said. You did all of this. I just reminded them who you are, Bull said. You're the one who's been carrying it all this time. He walked away, leaning heavily on his cane. Maya watched him go. Noticed for the first time how slowly he moved, how carefully, as if every step hurt. How long had she been so wrapped up in her own pain that she'd stopped seeing his? Sarah Chen appeared at her elbow. That was intense. That's one word for it, Maya said. How do you feel? Maya thought about the question, thought about 3 years of hiding, thought about the challenge coin in her pocket, in the tattoo on her shoulder, and the memories she'd been trying to outrun. Thought about Bull's words, the easy days are over. Terrified, she said finally. But maybe that's okay. Maybe terrified is better than invisible. Maybe, Sarah agreed. She squeezed Maya's hand once, then left her alone with her thoughts, in the empty range, in the weight of everything that had just changed. Maya stood there for a long time, watching the sun move across the sky, feeling the ache in her shoulder and her leg and her face, touching the challenge coin in her pocket. The easy days are over, Bull had said. But the hard days, Maya thought, those are where we do our best work. She just hoped she remembered how. The CQC pit was 60 feet of red clay and sand, surrounded by concrete barriers worn smooth from decades of combat training. Maya stood in the center, hands loose at her sides, watching Marcus Vance circle her like a predator who just realized his prey might have teeth. 3 minutes ago, he grabbed her from behind in what he'd called a demonstration of proper defensive techniques. 2 seconds later, he'd been airborne, flipping over her shoulder to land flat on his back in the sand. The impact had knocked the wind from his lungs and the confidence from his eyes. Now he was getting up, rage replacing shock, pride wounded worse than his body. Lucky throw, Marcus said, brushing sand from his uniform. His voice carried across the pit to where 97 personnel stood watching. Let's go again. Maya said nothing, just returned to her neutral stance, weight balanced, center of gravity low, hands relaxed but ready. The stance she'd learned in her first week of SEAL training and had used in 17 countries across 9 deployments. Marcus came at her faster this time, more aggressive. His fist swung toward her face in an attack that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with humiliation. Maya's head slipped to the side. The blow missed by millimeters. Her hand caught his wrist, redirecting his momentum, and suddenly Marcus was past her, stumbling off balance. She didn't pursue, didn't counterattack, just returned to her neutral stance and waited. Come on, Marcus spun, his composure completely shattered. Fight back, stop running. I'm not running, Staff Sergeant, Maya said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. I'm defending. There's a difference. He came at her again, faster, more desperate, a combination of strikes designed to overwhelm through sheer aggression. Maya flowed around them like water, redirecting, deflecting, never retaliating, never escalating, each movement precise, economical, almost beautiful in its efficiency. Logan Pierce had been watching his mentor get humiliated for 30 seconds. That was 29 seconds too long. He launched himself at Maya from behind, arms outstretched to tackle her. She heard him coming, the scuff of boots on sand, the grunt of exertion. Without turning, Maya stepped aside at the last possible moment, catching Logan's outstretched arm and using his own momentum to send him sprawling into the dirt. Now she faced both of them, Marcus in front, Logan scrambling up from behind. They exchanged a glance, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then they attacked together. What happened next would be discussed in hushed whispers for months afterward. Maya dropped low, sweeping Logan's legs out from under him, while simultaneously blocking Marcus's downward strike. She rose like a wave, flowing past Logan's falling body, her movement putting him between her and Marcus. When Marcus tried to circle around, she was already repositioning, always keeping her attackers in front of her, always maintaining control of the space. In under 10 seconds, both men were on the ground, breathing hard, unable to land a single clean hit, and Maya hadn't thrown a single offensive strike. Enough! Colonel James Mitchell's voice cracked across the pit like a whip. Everyone froze. Mitchell descended from the observation platform, his stride purposeful, the crowd parting before him like water before a ship's bow. At 58, with 36 years of service behind him, Mitchell commanded respect through presence alone. He didn't need to raise his voice or make threats. His authority was simply a fact of nature. Staff Sergeant Vance, Mitchell said. His voice dropped to a dangerous register. Explain yourself. Marcus struggled to his feet, sand coating his uniform. Sir, I was conducting a training demonstration. What I saw, Mitchell said, was an instructor attacking a civilian support staff member. Sir, What I saw, Mitchell continued, cutting him off, was a coordinated assault by two soldiers on a single unarmed woman. Marcus's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. She defended herself without causing injury to either of you. Mitchell stepped closer, his presence filling the pit. Which is more than you deserve. Report to my office. Now. Marcus's face had gone the color of old ash. His mouth moved, but no words came. Finally, he managed, yes, sir. As he trudged away, Logan limping behind him, Mitchell turned to Maya. Something complicated moved behind his eyes. Are you injured, Senior Chief? The use of her rank felt strange after 3 years of being called nothing at all. No, sir. Good. He paused, seemed to wrestle with something. That was Krav Maga combined with something else. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, perhaps, and something I don't recognize. Maya met his gaze without flinching. I've picked up things here and there, sir. Here and there. Mitchell nodded slowly. Of course you have. He turned and walked away, leaving Maya standing alone in the center of the pit, surrounded by silent, staring soldiers. Bull Matheson watched from the command building doorway. He'd seen the entire fight, knew it would happen, had engineered it to happen. Maya needed to be pushed, needed to remember who she was, needed to stop hiding before the hiding killed her. But watching her fight, watching her use the skills he'd helped teach her all those years ago, Bull felt something crack in his chest, not his heart, not yet, but close. The pain had been getting worse. Started 6 months ago as a dull ache in his abdomen. He'd ignored it. Old men always had aches. That was the price of living long enough to collect them. But then the ache became sharp. The sharp became constant. And finally, 3 months ago, he'd gone to Walter Reed and gotten the diagnosis that changed everything. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Inoperable. 4 to 6 months if he was lucky. Maybe less if he wasn't. He hadn't told Maya. Couldn't. Not while she was still broken. Not while she was still hiding from herself. She needed to be whole again before he left. Needed to remember her strength, her purpose, her identity as a warrior. That's why he'd arranged everything. The revelation of her identity, the phone call that would come tonight, the mission that would force her to become Phoenix one last time. Because Bull Matheson was dying, and before he died, he had one final duty to fulfill. One last promise to keep to his best friend. He had to save Maya from herself. Marcus Vance sat in Colonel Mitchell's office for 47 minutes. When he emerged, his face was pale and his swagger was gone. He moved like a man who'd just watched his entire future collapse in real time. Because it had. Mitchell had been clear, clinical, merciless. Marcus had assaulted a decorated war hero, a Navy Cross recipient, a woman who'd given more to this country than Marcus could comprehend. There would be an investigation, there would be charges, there would be a court-martial. And when it was over, Marcus's career would be finished. But Marcus barely heard the words. Because while Mitchell had been detailing his professional destruction, Marcus had been remembering something. A photograph he'd found in his father's belongings after the funeral. His father in desert camouflage, arm around another young SEAL, both of them smiling despite the hell they'd just survived. The other SEAL had been Bull Matheson. Marcus's father, Thomas Vance, had been SEAL Team 2, Iraq War, Fallujah. He'd come home in 2005 with a silver star and psychological wounds that never healed. Marcus had been born in 2002, had grown up watching his father deteriorate, The nightmares, the drinking, the violent outbursts followed by days of catatonic silence. When Marcus was 12, his father had walked into the garage, closed the door, started the car, and let carbon monoxide do what the war hadn't managed. Marcus had been the one to find him. For 22 years, Marcus had been running from that memory, terrified of becoming his father, overcompensating with aggression and certainty, and the absolute conviction that weakness led to death. He'd built his entire identity around being strong, being hard, being the opposite of the broken man who'd abandoned him. And now he'd learned that the woman he'd attacked, the woman he'd humiliated and struck and dismissed as worthless, was the daughter of Bull Matheson, the man who'd saved his father's life in Fallujah, the man who'd given Thomas Vance 15 more years of life, even if those years had been filled with pain. Marcus had assaulted a hero to prove he wasn't weak, and in doing so he'd become exactly what he feared: a bully, a coward, a man who used power to hurt people who couldn't fight back. Except Maya could fight back. She'd proven that. She could have destroyed him, could have broken bones, ended his career with violence instead of revelation. But she'd chosen restraint, chosen mercy. That mercy burned worse than any punch could have. Marcus found Maya 2 hours later. She was back at her workstation, methodically cleaning weapons as if nothing had happened, as if the entire base wasn't buzzing with the story of the SEAL who'd been hiding in plain sight for 3 years. "Senior Chief," Marcus said from the doorway, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya looked up. Her face was neutral, gave nothing away. "I don't expect you to accept this," Marcus continued. "I don't expect forgiveness. I need to say something." Maya set down her cleaning rod, waited. "My father was Thomas Vance, SEAL Team 2. He served with Colonel Matheson in Iraq, Fallujah, 2004. Something shifted in Maya's expression, not quite recognition, but understanding. "He came home broken," Marcus said. "PTSD before they called it that. He tried. God, he tried. But the war had taken something from him he couldn't get back. When I was 12, he killed himself. And I spent the next 22 years terrified I'd become him." Marcus's voice cracked. "So I became something else. Something hard, cruel, strong. I told myself it was protection, but it was just fear wearing a different mask. What you did to me," Maya said quietly. "What you've done to how many others. That wasn't strength. That was the same brokenness, just pointed outward instead of inward." "I know," Marcus said, "and I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, not because my career is over, but because you deserve better. Everyone does." Maya studied him for a long moment. "Your father," she said finally. "Bull told me about him once. Said Thomas Vance was one of the bravest men he'd ever served with. Said he held a defensive position at Fallujah for 5 hours while wounded, covering an evacuation. Saved 8 lives that day." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I never knew that. He never talked about the war." "Because the good memories and the bad ones were all tangled up," Maya said. "That's what trauma does. It takes your proudest moments and poisons them. Makes you unable to separate who you were from what you survived." "Is that what happened to you after Raqqa?" Maya didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was soft. "I held a position for 9 hours. Killed 23 enemy combatants. Saved 12 American lives. Just like your father. And for 3 years after, I couldn't look at my Navy Cross without seeing the faces of the 6 teammates who didn't make it out." "So you hid." "So I hid," Maya agreed, "because being invisible felt safer than being broken in public." "And now? Now I don't get to hide anymore," Maya said. "Bull made sure of that. He's trying to save you," Marcus said. "Same way he tried to save my father. But my father couldn't be saved. He was too far gone." "You're not your father," Maya said. "And this doesn't have to be your ending." Marcus looked at her. This woman he'd attacked. This warrior he'd dismissed. This person who had every right to hate him and was instead offering something that looked almost like compassion. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you face consequences," Maya said. "Court-martial, probably confinement. Your career is over. That's not negotiable." "I know. But after that," Maya continued, "you get to choose. You can let this destroy you, or you can use it to become someone your father would be proud of." "How?" "That's not my question to answer," Maya said. "But I'll tell you what Bull told me when I was drowning in grief and guilt. He said, 'The easy days are over, but the hard days are where we prove who we really are.'" Marcus nodded slowly. "Thank you, Senior Chief." "Don't thank me yet," Maya said. "Thank me in 5 years if you've actually changed." He left. Maya returned to her weapons. but her hands were shaking now. The adrenaline from the fight finally catching up, the weight of exposure finally settling on her shoulders. She'd been invisible for 3 years, safe, hidden, and now everyone knew, everyone saw, there was no going back. The door opened again. This time it was Bull. "You handled that well," he said, settling onto his usual stool. "Did I have a choice?" "There's always a choice, kiddo. You chose compassion. That says something about who you are." Maya set down the rifle she was cleaning, turned to face him fully. "What did Mitchell say to you before all this?" "He asked if I was sure, if pushing you like this was the right move." "And you said?" "I said that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is force them to face what they're running from." Maya's jaw tightened. "You had no right." "I had every right," Bull said gently. "I'm your father. That's what fathers do. We protect our children, even when protecting them means making them uncomfortable." "Adoptive father," Maya said. The correction was automatic, meaningless. "Father," Bull repeated, "the biology doesn't matter. I raised you. I trained you. I watched you become someone extraordinary. And I'm not going to let you waste that by hiding in a weapons depot for the rest of your life." "What if I want to hide?" "Then you don't get to," Bull said. His voice was firm but not unkind. "Because the world needs you, Maya. The next generation needs you. And whether you're ready or not, your hiding days are done." Maya wanted to argue, wanted to rage against this choice that had been made for her. But she was tired, so tired, and some part of her, the part she'd been trying to silence for 3 years, was relieved. "There's something else," Bull said. His voice changed, became heavier. "Something I need to tell you, but not here. Tonight, my quarters, 1900. "What is it?" "Tonight," Bull repeated. "I promise." He left before she could press further. Maya sat alone in the depot as afternoon faded to evening. The base around her buzzed with gossip and speculation. Senior Chief Maya Crane, Navy Cross, 3 Purple Hearts, Serpent Dawn, the cleaning lady who was actually a legend. She hated it, hated the attention, hated the questions she could see forming in people's eyes, hated the weight of their expectations settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. But more than that, she hated the relief she felt. Because Bull was right. Hiding had been killing her. Slowly, quietly. She'd been dying by inches, losing herself piece by piece, until there was almost nothing left. At least now she was exposed. At least now she had to figure out who Maya Crane was when she wasn't pretending to be invisible. Sarah Chen found her at 1730. "You planning to sit here all night?" "Considering it," Maya said. "Bull asked me to make sure you eat something before tonight." "Tonight?" 1900, his quarters. He said you're expected." Maya frowned. "He told you, but he won't tell me what it's about?" "He said you'd know when you got there," Sarah said. She pulled a protein bar from her pocket. "Eat this. You haven't had anything since breakfast." Maya accepted the bar without enthusiasm. "Everyone's staring at me." "Of course they are. You're a Navy Cross recipient working as a maintenance tech. That's the kind of story people talk about for years." "I didn't want to be a story." "Too late for that," Sarah said, not unkindly. "But maybe being a story isn't the worst thing. Maybe it means you get to inspire people instead of just fixing their weapons." "I don't want to inspire anyone." "And yet here we are," Sarah said. "Rachel Torres has been asking about you all afternoon. Wants to know how you did it, how you made it through SEAL training, how you survived all those deployments. She's thinking about applying to Special Forces." Maya looked up sharply. "She can't. She's not ready." "Maybe not now," Sarah agreed, "but she could be, with the right teacher." "I'm not a teacher. You taught Connor Walsh how to breathe through his panic attacks. You taught half the trainees on this base how to properly maintain their weapons. You've been teaching for 3 years, you just didn't call it that." Maya had no response to that. Sarah checked her watch. 1800, you've got an hour before Bull's meeting. Go shower. Change. Try to remember you're human and not a machine. "I'm not sure I remember how to be human anymore." "Then fake it until you do," Sarah said. She squeezed Maya's shoulder once and left. Maya sat in the empty depot for another 10 minutes. Then she stood, locked up, and made her way across the base toward the bachelor officer quarters where Bull lived. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded her of sunsets in other places. Raqqa, Mosul, Kandahar, places where sunsets meant the night's work was about to begin, where darkness was an ally and silence was survival. She didn't miss those places, but she missed who she'd been in them, certain, purposeful, part of something bigger than herself. Now she was just exposed, and she had no idea what came next. Bull's quarters were modest. 2 rooms in a building reserved for retired officers who still worked on base in advisory capacities. Maya knocked at exactly 1900. "Come in, kiddo." Bull sat in his worn leather chair, the one he'd brought from home. A glass of whiskey sat on the table beside him. Untouched, he looked tired, more tired than Maya had ever seen him. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the couch. Maya sat, waited. Bull had never been one for small talk when serious conversations loomed. "I've been lying to you," Bull said, finally, "for 6 months, and I need to stop." Maya's stomach clenched. "What kind of lying?" "The kind where I know something you need to know, and I keep it from you, because I think you're not ready to hear it." Bull reached for the whiskey, took a small sip. "3 things, actually. 3 pieces of information that are going to change everything." "Bull, you're scaring me." "I know," he said, "and I'm sorry, but this can't wait anymore." He set down the glass, met her eyes. "First thing, 6 months ago I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, inoperable. 4 to 6 months, the doctor said, maybe less." The world tilted. Maya's ears rang. Words came out, but she couldn't hear them over the rushing in her head. "What? 6 months? Bull, why didn't you?" "Because you were broken," Bull said gently. "And I needed you to be whole before I left. Needed you to remember who you are, what you're capable of. I couldn't die knowing you were still hiding in that depot, wasting away." "You should have told me." Maya's voice cracked. "I could have. We could have." "We couldn't have done anything," Bull said. "This cancer doesn't respond to treatment. Chemo would just make my last months miserable without adding any time. I chose quality over quantity. Chose to spend my remaining time making sure you'd be okay after I'm gone." Tears streamed down Maya's face. "I can't lose you, not you too." "You're not going to lose me, kiddo. I'll always be with you, in everything I taught you, every value I instilled, every skill we practiced together. That doesn't die when I do." "That's not the same," Maya said. "That's not enough." "I know," Bull said, "but it's all we get, and we're going to make it count." He paused. "Which brings me to the second thing." Maya wiped her eyes, tried to compose herself, failed. "What second thing?" "Tyler Sullivan," Bull said. "Hawk, your teammate." The name hit Maya like a physical blow. "Don't, please don't." "He's alive, Maya." The words hung in the air. Impossible. Cruel. A lie dressed up as hope. "No," Maya said. "I watched him fall. I watched the building collapse. He's gone." "You watched him fall," Bull agreed. "You assumed he died. But his body was never recovered, never confirmed. For 3 years, he's been listed as missing in action, presumed dead. But 8 weeks ago, we got confirmation. He's alive, captured, held at a facility near the Syria-Iraq border." Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Hawk, alive, after 3 years of grief and guilt and the absolute certainty that he'd died saving her. "How do you know?" "Intelligence sources I still have access to," Bull said. "Satellite imagery, signal intercepts, human intelligence from assets on the ground. It took me 8 weeks to confirm, to be absolutely certain, and now I am." "Why didn't you tell me immediately?" "Because you weren't ready," Bull said. "You were still invisible, still broken, still hiding. A rescue mission requires the real Maya Crane, Phoenix, the warrior, not the maintenance tech. So I waited. I pushed you. I forced you to remember who you are. And now you're ready." "Ready for what?" "To bring him home," Bull said. "In 72 hours, Hawk is being transferred to a more secure facility. After that, extraction becomes nearly impossible. We have a 3-day window, that's all." Maya's mind raced. A rescue mission, black ops, probably unsanctioned, definitely dangerous. "Who's we?" "You, me, and 2 operators I've worked with before. Small team, minimal footprint, maximum deniability." "You," Maya said. "Bull, you have cancer. You can barely walk. You can't." "I can do whatever I decide to do," Bull interrupted. "And I've decided that my last act in this world is going to be helping you save the man you have mourned for 3 years. The teammate you think you failed. I'm going, kiddo. That's not negotiable." "This is insane." "Probably," Bull agreed, "but we're doing it anyway." He leaned forward. "There's a third thing, something you need to know before you make your decision." "What could possibly be worse than what you've already told me?" Bull pulled out his phone, opened a file, turned the screen toward Maya. The photograph showed a man, thin, bearded, marked by years of captivity, but the eyes were unmistakable. Tyler Sullivan, Hawk, alive. This was taken 3 weeks ago, Bull said. Our asset managed to photograph the prisoner through a window, but she also managed something else. She made contact. Brief, dangerous, but she delivered a message. What message? Bull's voice softened. Hawk said, "Tell Phoenix I'm still here. Tell her the easy days are over." Maya's breath caught. Those words, their words, the phrase Bull had taught them both. The reminder that hard times were where warriors proved themselves. Hawk was alive, and he was asking for her. "When do we leave?" Maya asked. 1800 tomorrow. Transport is arranged. Briefing en route. 72 hours to plan, execute, and extract. What if something goes wrong? Then we improvise, Bull said, like we always have. Maya looked at the photograph again. Hawk's face. Older, scarred, but alive. For 3 years she'd carried the weight of his death. Had convinced herself that her 9-hour holdout at Raqqa had been meaningless, because the person she'd been protecting time for had already fallen. But he hadn't fallen. He'd been captured, and he'd been waiting, hoping, believing that someday someone would come for him. She would not let him down again. "Okay," Maya said, "I'm in." Bull smiled, not the gentle smile he used when comforting her, but the warrior smile, the one that said the mission was on and the odds didn't matter. "Good. Now there's one more thing you need to know. More than cancer, captured teammates, and suicide missions. This one's about the facility where Hawk's being held," Bull said. He pulled up another file on his phone. Satellite imagery, thermal readings, 40-plus hostiles on site, 24/7 guard rotation, and according to our latest intel, Russian private military contractors providing security. Russian PMCs? Why? Because Hawk is not just a prisoner, Bull said. He's a political asset, someone valuable enough to keep alive but secret enough to deny. The Russians are providing security in exchange for whatever intelligence they can extract. So this isn't just a rescue, Maya said. It's an international incident waiting to happen. Which is why it has to be off the books, Bull said. No official sanction, no acknowledgement. If something goes wrong, we were never there. The United States government will deny everything. And if we succeed, then we bring Hawk home, Bull said, and we deal with the consequences after. Maya studied the satellite imagery, the compound layout, the guard positions, the entry and exit points. Her mind was already calculating approaches, timing windows, contingencies. This was who she was. Not the maintenance tech, not the invisible woman hiding from her past, but Phoenix, the warrior who'd held impossible positions and survived impossible odds. The easy days were over, but the hard days were where she did her best work. "Okay," Maya said again, "let's bring him home." Bull reached over and squeezed her hand. "That's my girl." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Father and daughter, warrior and warrior, two people who'd survived too much to be broken by what came next. "Bull," Maya said quietly, "how much time do you really have?" 4 months maybe, 6 if I'm lucky. And this mission, the exertion, the stress, will probably cost me some of that time, Bull finished. "I know, and I don't care. I'd rather spend my last days doing something that matters than wasting away in a hospital bed. But, no buts, kiddo. This is my choice, my last mission, and I'm making it count." He paused. "Your father told me something once. We were pinned down in Kandahar, bullets everywhere, no way out. He looked at me and said, 'The easy days are over, Bull, but that's when we do our best work.'" "And then what happened?" "Then we fought our way out," Bull said. "Together, like always. And we kept fighting until he couldn't fight anymore. Until that last deployment when he didn't come home." His voice roughened. "I made him a promise that day. I promised that if anything happened to him, I'd look after you. I'd protect you. I'd teach you everything he would have taught you." "You kept that promise," Maya said. "More than kept it." "Not yet," Bull said. "One more mission, one more rescue, one more chance to prove that promises matter, that warriors don't abandon their teammates. That family means something." "You're going to die doing this, aren't you?" Bull didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady, certain. "Maybe, but I was going to die anyway. At least this way, I go out fighting, protecting someone I love, saving someone who deserves to be saved. That's not a bad way to end." "It's a terrible way to end," Maya said, tears flowing freely now. "And I hate it. And you and this whole stupid mission." "I know," Bull said gently. "But you're going anyway, because you're a warrior. And warriors do the hard things even when they hate them. He was right. Of course he was right. Bull was always right about this stuff. 1800 tomorrow, Maya said. Where do I meet you? Helipad behind the command building. Bring only what you need. We'll have the rest. Maya stood, started to leave, stopped at the door. Bull? Yeah, kiddo. I love you. I love you too, Bull said. More than anything in this world. Which is why I'm doing this. Why I need you to be ready. Why everything has to happen exactly the way it's happening. The easy days are over, Maya said. But the hard days, Bull finished. That's where legends are born. Maya left, walked across the base toward her own quarters. The night air was cool, stars bright overhead. Somewhere in the distance, soldiers were training, living their normal lives, unaware that in 72 hours, everything would change. She reached her quarters, sat on her bunk, pulled out the challenge coin Bull had given her when she graduated SEAL training. On one side, the eagle and trident. On the other, a name worn smooth from years of handling. But tonight, she looked closer. Really looked. And there, hidden in the worn metal, was a second name she'd never noticed before. Engraved so small she'd missed it for years. Hawk. Bull had known. Even back then, he'd known that someday she'd need this reminder. This connection to the teammate she thought she'd lost. Maya closed her fist around the coin, felt the metal warm in her palm. Tomorrow, she would become Phoenix again. Would pick up the weapons and the skills and the identity she tried so hard to bury. But tonight, she was just Maya, grieving the father she was about to lose, hoping for the teammate she was about to save, terrified of the mission that would define both. The easy days were over. The hard days were just beginning. And somewhere in Syria, Tyler Hawk Sullivan sat in a cell, counting down the hours until transfer, holding on to the desperate hope that someone somewhere still remembered him. That someone was coming. That Phoenix would rise one more time. He had no idea he was right. The helicopter lifted off at exactly 1800 hours. A modified Black Hawk, stripped of identifying markings and equipped with noise suppression technology that made it nearly silent at altitude. Maya climbed aboard first, securing her gear with the automatic efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Bull followed more slowly, favoring his bad knee, the shrapnel injury from Fallujah still causing him pain 20 years later. 2 other operators were already aboard. Cypher sat near the port door, checking weapons with methodical precision. Male, mid-30s, face hidden behind a balaclava. No names, no histories, just skills and silence. Shade occupied the starboard position. Female, early 40s based on movement patterns, also masked, also anonymous. The kind of people who existed in the shadows between official military operations and actions governments could never acknowledge. Phoenix, Cypher said by way of greeting. Heard good things about Raqqa. Heard you held solo for 9 hours, Shade added. That takes something special. Maya didn't respond, just settled into her seat and began her weapons check. The Glock 19 rode in a thigh holster, M4 carbine across her lap. Spare magazines, flashbangs, smoke, 1 fragmentation grenade for emergencies. Everything she needed to bring hell to whoever stood between her and Hawk. Bull took the seat beside her. Their shoulders touched, solid, real, a reminder that for the next 72 hours they were a team again. Father and daughter, warrior and warrior, fighting together one last time. The helicopter climbed into the darkening sky. Fort Liberty shrank below them. Maya watched through the open door as the base became smaller. The weapons depot where she'd hidden, the range where Bull had exposed her, the barracks where young soldiers slept, dreaming of glory and unaware of what glory actually cost. All of it fading into memory. You okay, kiddo? Bull asked quietly. Maya turned to look at him. Really look at him. The lines around his eyes had deepened in the past 6 months. His face was thinner, the cancer eating away at him from the inside, but his eyes were still sharp, still alert. Still the eyes of a warrior who'd survived 2 wars and had no intention of dying quietly. No, Maya said honestly, but I will be. Bull smiled, that gentle smile that was just for her. That's all any of us can ask for. They flew in silence for the first hour, the sun setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded Maya of other sunsets in other places. Most of them violent, most of them marking the transition from preparation to action. Commander Julia Pierce's voice crackled through their headsets at 1900. Phoenix, Bull, approaching first waypoint, 6 hours to landing zone. Use the time to review mission parameters one more time. Maya pulled out the tablet she'd been issued. Satellite imagery of the compound filled the screen. She'd memorized this layout already, could draw it from memory in her sleep. But repetition was survival. The more times she reviewed the plan, the more likely she was to execute it perfectly. The compound sat in a valley 40 kilometers from the Syrian border with Iraq. Isolated, remote, the kind of place you put prisoners you wanted to keep secret. 3 buildings arranged in a triangle around a central courtyard. Guard towers at each corner, spotlights sweeping predictable patterns, 42 hostiles confirmed by thermal imaging. And somewhere in the main building, second floor northeast corner room, Tyler Sullivan, Hawk, alive after 3 years of being presumed dead. Guard rotation? Bull asked, leaning over to study the screen. Every 4 hours, Maya said. But there's a 90-second gap at 0200 when the night shift changes. North wall is unwatched. That's our entry point. Exits? 3 primary. North wall where we enter. East gate near the vehicle depot. South wall near the generator building. If we're compromised, south wall is closest to the landing zone. Rules of engagement? Maya met his eyes. This was the question that mattered. The line between a rescue mission and a slaughter. Minimum force necessary. We're here for Hawk, not body count. Avoid contact where possible. Neutralize threats when unavoidable. No civilians. And if we're compromised? Then we improvise, Maya said, like we always have. Bull nodded, satisfied. He'd trained her well, knew she understood the difference between mission objectives and unnecessary violence. That distinction mattered. It was what separated warriors from killers. Cypher spoke from across the cabin. Intel shows Russian PMC contractors on site. 12 confirmed. Probably more we haven't spotted. Why Russians? Shade asked. Because Hawk isn't just a prisoner, Bull said. His voice carried the weight of classified information he shouldn't have, but did anyway. He's a political asset, someone valuable enough to keep alive, but secret enough to deny. The Russians are providing security in exchange for whatever intelligence they can extract. So this isn't just a rescue, Cypher said. It's an international incident waiting to happen, which is why it has to be off the books, Bull confirmed. No official sanction, no acknowledgement. If something goes wrong, we were never there. The United States government will deny everything. And if we succeed, Shade asked? Then we bring Hawk home, Maya said, and we deal with the consequences after. The helicopter pressed deeper into the night. They crossed into international airspace at 2100, refueled at a secret facility that didn't appear on any maps at 2230, changed into desert camouflage that would blend with the terrain around the compound. Maya watched Bull change uniforms, saw how carefully he moved, how he winced when he thought no one was looking. The cancer was progressing faster than he'd admitted. Every movement cost him. Every breath was a small war against the thing eating him alive. But he was here, suited up, armed, ready to fight. Because this was who Thomas Matheson was. A warrior who would rather die in combat than waste away in a hospital bed. At midnight, they crossed into Syrian airspace, flying low, using terrain to mask their approach. The desert below was dark, endless. The kind of darkness that made you feel like the only humans left alive. Maya had felt this darkness before. In Iraq, in Afghanistan, in places where night was an ally and silence was survival. The familiarity was both comforting and terrifying, like coming home to a house that had burned down. 30 minutes to landing zone, the pilot announced. Weather's clear, no hostile aircraft detected. You've got a clean insertion. Bull began his final weapons check. Maya did the same. Cypher and Shade moved through their own rituals, each operator preparing in their own way for what came next. Maya, Bull said quietly, there's something I need to tell you before we land, before this starts. Maya's stomach clenched. More revelations, more truth she wasn't ready to hear. What is it? The Russian commander on site, his name is Colonel Dmitry Volkov. The name meant nothing to Maya. Should I know him? Bull's face had gone hard. I do. He was a PMC commander in Iraq, worked as a military advisor during the Fallujah offensive in 2004. He commanded the security detail that killed 8 SEALs during the battle. Understanding dawned cold and terrible. The sniper who shot your knee, the one who gave you that limp, was under Volkov's command, Bull confirmed. I've been hunting him for 20 years. Thought he was dead, retired, gone. And now I find out he's here, in this compound, standing between us and Hawk. Bull, Maya said carefully. This mission is about Hawk, not revenge. I know that, Bull said, but something in his voice suggested otherwise. But if the opportunity presents itself, if I have a clear shot, you take it, Maya finished, and risk compromising the entire mission for personal vendetta. It's not vendetta, Bull said. It's justice. For 8 men who died because of him. For 20 years of nightmares. For your father who served with some of those men and carried their memory until the day he died. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to remind Bull that revenge and justice weren't the same thing, that personal grudges had no place in tactical operations, that his job was to provide overwatch and cover their extraction, not settle old scores. But she looked at his face, saw the weight of 20 years, saw the cancer eating him alive, saw a dying man who'd spent 2 decades carrying the ghosts of friends who'd never made it home. Who was she to deny him this? If you get a shot, Maya said slowly, and it doesn't compromise the mission, and it doesn't put Hawk at risk, then you make the call. But Bull, if choosing Volkov means losing Hawk, then I choose Hawk, Bull finished. I promise, kiddo, this mission is about bringing your teammate home. Everything else is secondary. The helicopter began its descent. Maya felt her stomach drop, not from the motion, but from the sudden certainty that everything was about to change, that the next few hours would define the rest of her life. Or end it. They touched down in a dry riverbed 12 kilometers from the target. The rotors kicked up clouds of dust that obscured everything beyond arm's reach. Maya was out before the skids fully settled, boots hitting sand with the familiar crunch of Middle Eastern terrain. Cypher and Shade flanked her, weapons ready, eyes scanning the darkness. Bull was last out, moving more slowly than the rest, but still moving, still functional, still lethal despite the cancer and the pain and the 20 years since he'd last run an operation like this. The helicopter lifted off immediately, disappearing into the night. They were alone now. 4 operators against 40-plus hostiles in hostile territory with no backup and no extraction unless they made it to the alternate landing zone 12 kilometers south. Maya took point, leading them away from the riverbed and into the desert. They moved in tactical formation. 3 shadows flowing across the sand like water seeking the lowest ground. No lights, no sound, just the steady rhythm of boots on sand and the slow countdown of a mission clock that allowed for no delays. Hours passed, the moon rose and set. Stars wheeled overhead in patterns Maya remembered from 100 deployments. And then finally they reached the ridgeline overlooking the compound. It was smaller than the satellite images suggested. 3 buildings surrounded by a makeshift wall, guard towers at each corner, spotlights sweeping the perimeter in predictable patterns. And in the main building's second-floor northeast corner room, a single window with dim light behind it. Hawk! Maya raised her binoculars, scanned the compound, counted guards, noted patrol patterns. Everything matched the intelligence, which meant either they'd gotten lucky or someone wanted them to think they'd gotten lucky. Guard count is doubled, Cypher whispered, his voice barely audible even at close range. Thermal shows 42. Intel said 20. Bull pulled up his own thermal imaging, studied the patterns. PMC signatures confirmed, 12 Russians, and there in the courtyard, that heat pattern. Maya looked where he was pointing, saw a figure standing in the center of the compound, taller than the others, moving with the confidence of someone in command. Volkov, Bull said. His voice had gone cold, flat. The voice of a warrior who'd just identified his target. Maya put her hand on his arm. Bull, remember the mission? I remember, Bull said, but his eyes never left the figure in the courtyard. They watched for 30 minutes, memorizing patterns, timing rotations, waiting for the 90-second window when the north wall would be unwatched. At 0145, Maya made the call. We execute at 0200, exactly. Cypher, Shade, you handle the guard posts. Bull, you take overwatch from this position. I'll extract Hawk. Negative, Bull said. I'm going with you. Bull, your knee is my problem, not yours, Bull interrupted. I can still move, still fight, and I'm not letting you go in there alone. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to remind him that Overwatch required someone who could hold a position, that his cancer and his limp made him a liability in close quarters combat, that he'd be more valuable here than there. But she looked at his face, saw determination, saw love, saw a father who'd spent 18 years protecting his daughter and had no intention of stopping now. Fine, Maya said, but you stay behind me, you follow my lead, And if I tell you to fall back, you fall back. Understood? Crystal clear, Senior Chief. They moved into position. The guard rotation began at 01:55. Maya counted seconds in her head. Watched the north wall, waited for the gap. At 0200 exactly, the gap appeared. 90 seconds of unwatched wall, 90 seconds to get inside and disappear. They moved over the wall in 3 seconds, each operative boosting the next with practiced efficiency. Inside the compound, they split according to plan. Cypher and Shade peeling off toward the guard posts, Maya and Bull making for the main building. The door was locked. Maya picked it in 4 seconds. They slipped inside. The hallway was dark, silent, smelling of dust and neglect. She moved through it like a ghost, clearing corners, checking doors, ascending the stairs to the second floor. The room was at the end of the hall, a simple wooden door with a heavy padlock. Maya pulled out her picks and went to work. The lock clicked open. She pushed the door inward. And there he was, Tyler Sullivan. Hawk, 3 years older, 30 pounds lighter, eyes that had seen too much darkness. But alive, breathing, real. Phoenix, Hawk whispered. His voice was ragged from disuse. I knew you'd come. Maya crossed the room in 3 strides, knelt beside him, started working on the chains that bound him to the wall. We're getting you out of here. The guards are being handled. Can you walk? I can try. That was all Maya needed. The first chain fell away, then the second. Hawk slumped forward. She caught him, supporting his weight with an arm around his waist. Bull appeared in the doorway, saw Hawk. Something complicated moved across his face. Relief, joy, grief for the years this young man had lost. Good to see you, son, Bull said simply. Good to be seen, sir. Maya keyed her radio. Cypher Shade, package secured, beginning extraction. Static. She tried again. Cypher, respond. More static. Then a sound that made Maya's blood run cold. Gunfire, distant but unmistakable. Contact. Cypher's voice crackled through, strained with effort. Multiple hostiles. They were waiting for us. The lights came on. Every spotlight in the compound blazing to life, turning night into day. Sirens wailed, and from every building armed men poured into the courtyard. It was a trap. Bull moved to the window, looked out, cursed softly. 40+ hostiles, all positions. They knew we were coming. How? Maya asked. Doesn't matter now, Bull said. What matters is getting out. More gunfire. Closer this time. Cypher and Shade were fighting their way toward the extraction point, but they were pinned, outnumbered, running out of options. Maya made the decision in half a second. Bull, get Hawk to the south wall. I'll hold here. Buy you time. Negative, Bull said immediately. We stay together. There's no time to argue, Maya said. She pressed Hawk toward Bull. Get him out. That's the mission. Everything else is secondary. Maya, go! The command in her voice was absolute. The voice of a senior chief who'd led operations in 3 countries and knew when orders needed to be followed without question. Bull hesitated. Then he took Hawk's weight, began moving toward the stairs, stopped at the doorway, turned back. The easy days are over, kiddo. But the hard days, Maya finished, that's where we do our best work. Bull's eyes were wet. I love you more than anything in this world. I love you too, Maya said. Now go. I'll be right behind you. It was a lie. They both knew it. But sometimes lies were the kindest truths you could offer. Bull and Hawk disappeared down the stairs. Maya moved to the window, looked out at the compound, saw Cypher and Shade pinned behind a supply shed, saw hostiles converging from every direction, saw the Russian commander in the center of it all, directing troops with the calm efficiency of a man who'd done this before. Volkov. Maya opened fire, controlled bursts, taking out the hostiles closest to her teammates, drawing attention away from Cypher and Shade and toward herself, buying them precious seconds to reposition. The return fire was immediate. Bullets punched through the walls, tore chunks from the doorframe. Maya kept moving, changing positions, never staying still long enough to be targeted, using every trick Bull had taught her, every skill she'd learned through 9 deployments. She heard Bull's voice on the radio. At the south wall, Hawk secure, waiting for you. Negative, Maya said. Get him to the landing zone. I'll follow when I can. Maya, don't do this. That's an order, Colonel Matheson, Maya said, using his rank, making it official, giving him no choice but to follow protocol. Silence on the radio, then, understood, Senior Chief. We'll have the bird waiting. Maya fired another burst, took out 2 more hostiles. Her ammunition was running low. 30 rounds left. Maybe 40. Not enough for what was coming. The gunfire outside shifted. She risked a glance out the window, saw Cypher and Shade breaking toward the south wall, saw Bull and Hawk already over it, disappearing into the darkness, saw the Russian commander shouting orders, redirecting forces. And then she saw something else. Bull hadn't left. He was setting up position on a ridgeline 300 meters south of the compound, not running to the landing zone, but taking overwatch, preparing to cover her extraction the same way she was covering his. Stubborn old man, Maya's radio crackled. Bull's voice, calm, steady. Phoenix, you've got a clear path to the south wall. 30 seconds. I'll suppress the courtyard on my mark. Bull, you need to get Hawk to the... Cypher and Shade have Hawk, Bull interrupted. They're moving to the landing zone now. It's just you and me, kiddo, like old times. Bull opened fire. The M110 SAS rifle cracked from the ridgeline. Precision shots, taking out spotlights, guards, creating chaos in the courtyard. Maya didn't wait. She ran down the stairs, through the hallway, out the door and across the compound. Bullets chased her, tore up the ground at her feet. One grazed her shoulder, another her ribs. Pain bloomed, but she kept moving, kept running, kept fighting for every meter. She reached the south wall, started to climb, and heard Bull's voice, not on the radio, but carried across the desert by the wind. Volkov, I know you're listening. This is Thomas Matheson, SEAL Team 2, Fallujah 2004. Remember me? Maya froze halfway over the wall, looked back toward the ridgeline. Bull was standing, fully exposed, no longer hiding behind cover, his rifle shouldered but not firing, just standing there, waiting. From the compound, a voice answered, heavily accented. Russian. Matheson, after all these years, I thought Fallujah had killed you. Not yet, Bull called back. But soon, cancer. 4 months if I'm lucky. Thought I'd spend them settling old scores. You should have stayed hidden, old man. Lived your last days in peace. Peace is overrated, Bull said. Justice is better. Maya saw what was happening. Saw Bull drawing Volkov's attention. Drawing all the attention. Creating a distraction so massive that every eye in the compound was on him instead of on her. Bull, no, Maya whispered. Please, no. But Bull couldn't hear her, or maybe he could and he simply didn't care. Because this was his choice, his mission, his way of protecting the daughter he loved more than anything in the world. Volkov stepped into the courtyard, flanked by guards, holding a rifle. You want justice, Matheson? Then come down here. Face me like a man. I've got a better idea, Bull said. His voice carried across the desert. Strong, clear. The voice of a warrior who'd survived 2 wars and had no fear left to give. You and me, 20 years of history, let's end this. He started walking, down from the ridgeline, toward the compound, moving slowly because of the knee, because of the cancer, but moving with absolute certainty. Maya wanted to scream, wanted to run to him, wanted to stop him from throwing his life away on revenge that didn't matter as much as he thought it did. But she was frozen, caught between duty and love, between the mission and the man who'd raised her. Bull reached in level ground, stood 30 meters from the compound wall, facing Volkov, 2 old warriors, 2 relics from a war most people had forgotten, about to finish something that had started before Maya was born. Maya, Bull said, still not using the radio, just speaking loud enough to carry. If you're still there, and I know you are because you're too stubborn to leave, listen to me. Go. Now. Get to the landing zone. That's an order. Bull, I said go. The command was absolute, the voice of a father who would not be disobeyed. Maya dropped over the wall, started running toward the landing zone, tears streaming down her face, every step taking her further from the man who'd saved her life 100 times. Behind her, she heard gunfire, then an explosion, then silence. The landing zone was 2 kilometers away. Maya covered it in 8 minutes, running on pure adrenaline and grief and the desperate need to honor Bull's sacrifice by completing the mission. The helicopter was there, rotors spinning, Cypher and Shade helping Hawk aboard. They saw Maya coming, reached down to pull her up. Where's Bull? Cypher asked. Maya couldn't speak, just shook her head. The helicopter lifted off, banking hard, climbing into the night sky as the compound erupted in chaos below. Maya looked out the open door, saw fire, smoke, the aftermath of whatever Bull had done in those final moments. She'd never know exactly what happened, never know if he'd taken Volkov with him or if he'd simply bought her time to escape, never know his last thoughts or his last words or his last breath. All she knew was that Thomas Matheson, Bull, The man who'd raised her and trained her and loved her unconditionally for 18 years was gone. And she'd never even said goodbye. Hawk's hand found hers, squeezed. He saved us. Again, that's what Bull did. He saved people. Maya nodded, couldn't trust her voice. The helicopter carried them deeper into the night, away from Syria, away from the compound, away from the man who'd given everything so they could live. Cypher handed her a radio headset. Nomad wants to talk to you. Maya put it on. Commander Pierce's voice filled her ears. Phoenix, confirm package status. Hawk secured, Maya said, her voice hollow. Bull is KI. Long silence, then, understood. He died a warrior. We'll bring him home. But Maya knew better, right? There would be nothing to bring home. Bull had known that, had planned for it, had made sure his last act was so complete that there would be no body to recover, no evidence to tie the United States to an illegal operation on foreign soil, just ashes and memories and the weight of a promise kept. The helicopter flew through the darkness. Maya sat in silence, holding Hawk's hand, feeling the absence of Bull beside her like a physical wound. She'd lost her biological father when she was 8, had spent 18 years with Bull as his replacement, and now she'd lost him too. Some people spent their whole lives without ever having one father who loved them. Maya had been lucky enough to have 2, and unlucky enough to watch both of them die for their country. The easy days were over. They'd been over for a long time, and Maya had no idea how to survive the hard days without the man who'd taught her how. But she would try, because that's what Bull would want, because that's what warriors did. They survived. They endured. They carried the weight of the fallen and kept moving forward. Even when moving forward felt impossible, especially then, the helicopter touched down at Fort Liberty at 06:15. Dawn was breaking over North Carolina, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that reminded Maya of other mornings in other places. But this morning was different. This morning she was coming home without the man who'd raised her. Colonel James Mitchell stood alone on the tarmac. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just one officer waiting to receive what remained of a team that had left 5 days ago. Maya stepped out first. Her shoulder was bandaged beneath her tactical vest. Her ribs were wrapped tight. Every movement sent sharp reminders of bullets that had come too close. But she was walking. She was breathing. She was alive. Hawk came next, carried on a stretcher by Cypher and Shade. 3 years of captivity had left him 30 pounds lighter than he should be. His face was gaunt. His beard was long and unkempt, but his eyes were clear, alert, aware that he was finally, impossibly, home. Mitchell approached, rendered a salute that Maya returned automatically. His eyes asked the question before his mouth did. Bull, he said quietly. KIA, Maya said. 1 word, 2 syllables. A lifetime of grief compressed into a single breath. Mitchell's jaw tightened. He was a career officer, had lost men before, knew the weight of those 2 syllables better than most. But Bull Matheson had been more than just another casualty. Bull had been a legend, a warrior who'd survived 2 wars and countless operations. The kind of man who wasn't supposed to die, except everyone died, even legends. He died a warrior, Mitchell said. Fort Liberty will honor him properly. Maya nodded, couldn't trust her voice to say more. Medical is waiting for both of you, Mitchell continued. Senior Chief, I know you hate this part, but it's not negotiable. 12-hour observation minimum. Doctor's orders. I'm fine, sir. You're wounded, exhausted, and you just lost your father, Mitchell said. Not unkindly. You're a lot of things, Senior Chief, but fine isn't one of them. Medical. Now, that's an order. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to insist she was operational, wanted to do anything except sit in a hospital room and feel the absence of Bull like a physical wound. But Mitchell was right. She wasn't fine, might never be fine again. Yes, sir, she said. The medical facility was exactly as Maya remembered. Sterile, efficient, smelling of antiseptic and the particular kind of anxiety that came from waiting for doctors to tell you how broken you were. She'd been here before, after Raqqa, after the 9-hour holdout that had earned her a Navy Cross and cost her a lung's worth of capacity. Dr. Elena Martinez was the same physician who treated her then, 42 years old, 15 years of military medicine. The kind of doctor who'd seen enough trauma to know when someone was hiding how bad it really was. Senior Chief, Dr. Martinez said, gesturing to an examination table. Let's see what we're working with. Maya stripped off her tactical vest, her shirt, revealed bandages that Shade had applied in the helicopter. Field dressing, good enough to stop bleeding, not good enough for what came next. Dr. Martinez cut away the bandages carefully, examined the grazing wound on Maya's shoulder, the deeper one along her ribs. Both had been clean, both would scar. Neither was immediately life-threatening. "You got lucky," Dr. Martinez said. "An inch to the left, and that rib shot punctures your lung. Again." "I'm familiar with punctured lungs," Maya said. "I remember." Dr. Martinez began cleaning the wounds properly, preparing to close them. "Raqqa, 2019. You came in here with a collapsed lung, shrapnel through your shoulder and leg, and kept insisting you were fine. Tried to discharge yourself after 3 hours. I had teammates who needed extraction." "You had teammates who were already extracted," Dr. Martinez corrected. "You just couldn't accept that you'd done everything you could, that it was time to stop fighting and start healing." Maya said nothing, because Dr. Martinez was right. She'd held that position for 9 hours, killed 23 enemy combatants, saved 12 American lives. And when the extraction finally came, when they'd pulled her out of that blood-soaked defensive position, she'd tried to go back, tried to search for Hawk one more time, tried to find the teammate she'd thought was buried in rubble. It had taken 4 soldiers to restrain her, 2 more to sedate her. And when she'd woken up in the same medical facility, the first thing she'd done was try to leave. Some patterns never changed. "The wounds will heal," Dr. Martinez said, finishing the sutures on Maya's shoulder. "But I'm more concerned about what I can't see. PTSD, grief, survivor's guilt. You just lost your father, Maya. That's not something you power through." "Bull wasn't my biological father," Maya said automatically. "Irrelevant," Dr. Martinez replied. "He raised you, trained you, loved you. That makes him your father in every way that matters. And now he's gone. That's trauma. That requires processing. I'll process it when the mission's complete." "The mission is complete," Dr. Martinez said. "Hawk is home. Bull is gone. There's nothing left to fight, just grief to survive." Maya looked away, couldn't meet the doctor's eyes. Because if she looked, if she made that connection, the walls might come down. And if the walls came down, she didn't know if she could put them back up. "I need you to stay for observation," Dr. Martinez said. 12 hours minimum. After that, we'll talk about what comes next. "What comes next is I go back to work," Maya said. "What comes next is you take time to grieve," Dr. Martinez corrected. "Because grief doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It just gets heavier, more destructive. Eventually, it destroys you from the inside out." She was talking about Thomas Vance, Marcus's father, the SEAL who'd come home from Fallujah in 2005 and spent 7 years trying to outrun his demons before they finally caught him in a garage with the car running. Maya wasn't Thomas Vance. She was stronger than that, had better coping mechanisms, had survived worse losses. Except she hadn't. She'd never lost Bull before, and the hole he'd left behind was so vast she couldn't see the edges. 12 hours, Maya said, then I'm leaving. Fair enough, Dr. Martinez said. But Maya, use those 12 hours. Think about what Bull would want for you. Think about whether hiding from grief honors his memory or dishonors it. She left. Maya sat alone in the examination room, looking at her hands. They were steady, competent. The hands of a warrior who'd held defensive positions and run operations and brought people home. But they were also empty. For 18 years, Bull had been there to catch her when she fell, to push her when she stalled, to remind her who she was when she forgot. Now those hands had to figure out how to be steady on their own. Sarah Chen found her 2 hours later. Maya was sitting in the observation room, staring out the window at Fort Liberty beyond. Sarah didn't knock, just entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and the kind of quiet presence that only 21 years of friendship could create. "Heard you were back," Sarah said, handing Maya a cup. "Been back 3 hours. And you've been sitting here alone the whole time?" "Doctor's orders, 12-hour observation." "That's not what I asked," Sarah said. She pulled up a chair, sat beside Maya. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." Maya, the way Sarah said her name, not with judgment, not with pity, just with the absolute certainty that lies between them, didn't work. Never had, never would. "I don't know how to be fine," Maya admitted. Her voice cracked on the last word. "Bull was the one who taught me how to survive losing people, and now he's the person I lost. How do I survive that?" "Same way you survive everything else," Sarah said. "One breath at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time." "That's not enough." "It's all any of us have," Sarah said. She put her arm around Maya's shoulders. "You don't have to be strong right now. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to breathe. The rest will come. Maya leaned into the embrace, let herself be held. For 3 years, she'd been invisible, hiding, alone. And even after Bull had exposed her, even after everyone knew who she was, she'd still felt isolated, still felt like she was carrying the weight of the world on shoulders that weren't strong enough. But here now, with Sarah's arms around her and coffee warming her hands and the knowledge that she didn't have to pretend to be okay, Maya let herself break. The tears came slowly at first, then faster, then in great racking sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for Bull, for her biological father, for Hawk's 3 lost years, for every mission that had taken something from her, for every loss that had carved her into someone she barely recognized. Sarah held her through all of it, didn't try to fix it, didn't offer empty platitudes, just held her and let her grieve. When the tears finally stopped, when Maya had nothing left to cry, Sarah handed her a napkin. Better? Sarah asked. No, Maya said honestly, but maybe less worse. That's progress, Sarah said. Now, have you been to see Hawk yet? Maya shook her head. They took him to ICU, antibiotics, rehydration. 3 years of captivity does damage. But he's alive. Because of you. Because of Bull. That matters. Bull died for him, Maya said. That's a hell of a weight to put on someone. Bull died doing what he chose to do, Sarah corrected. He chose that mission. He chose to cover your extraction. He chose to face Volkov. Those were his choices, not Hawk's burden to carry, not yours either. Maya wanted to believe that, wanted to accept that Bull's death was his own decision and not her failure. But the guilt sat heavy in her chest. Right next to the grief, right next to the anger at a world that took good men and left broken ones behind. I need to see him, Maya said. Hawk, I need to make sure he knows Bull didn't die for nothing. Then go, Sarah said. I'll tell Dr. Martinez you're taking a brief walk. For your mental health, she'll understand. The ICU was on the 3rd floor. Maya made the walk in silence, passing nurses and doctors and patients who recognized her now. Who knew she was Phoenix? Who looked at her with something between respect and pity? She hated both equally. Hawk's room was at the end of the hall. Private, quiet, the kind of room they gave to people who needed space to remember how to be human again. Maya knocked softly, heard Hawk's voice tell her to enter. He looked better than he had on the helicopter. The IV fluids were doing their work. Color was returning to his face, but he was still too thin, still too fragile, still bearing the scars of 3 years in a cell. Phoenix, Hawk said. His voice was stronger now. They told me you'd come. Took me a while, Maya said. She pulled up a chair, sat beside his bed. How are you feeling? Like I've been locked in a cell for 3 years, Hawk said with a slight smile. But alive. Thanks to you. Thanks to Bull. At the mention of Bull's name, something shifted in Maya's expression. Hawk saw it immediately. He didn't make it, did he? Hawk said quietly. Maya shook her head. He stayed behind, covered in my extraction, faced down Volkov and 40-plus hostiles to buy me time to get to the landing zone. He chose that, Hawk said. Didn't he? It wasn't forced. It was his choice. How did you know? Because that's who Bull was, Hawk said. He chose to save people, every single time. That was his nature, his calling. You can't blame yourself for him being exactly who he was meant to be. Maya's throat tightened. He had cancer, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 4 to 6 months to live. He knew this mission would probably cost him what little time he had left, and he went anyway. To save me, Hawk said, to help you, to give both of us a chance at a future he knew he wouldn't share. That's not tragedy, Phoenix. That's sacrifice. That's love. It hurts like tragedy, Maya said. I know, Hawk said. But pain doesn't mean it wasn't worth it. Bull made a choice. He spent his last days doing something that mattered, saving a teammate, protecting you, making sure his legacy continued. How many people get to choose their ending like that? Maya had never thought of it that way, had never considered that Bull's death might be exactly what he wanted. Not the cancer, not the pain, but the choice, the agency, the ability to decide that his last act would be one of service. He left me a journal, Maya said, 30 years of lessons, from the Gulf War and Iraq, everything he learned, everything he wanted to pass on. Have you read it? Hawk asked. Some of it, Maya admitted. It's hard. Every page is his voice, his wisdom, reminders of who he was and what he taught me. Then keep reading, Hawk said, because that journal is how Bull survives. Not physically, but in the lessons, the values, the warriors he trained, and the lives they'll save. That's immortality, Phoenix, not in monuments or medals, but in the difference we make. They sat in comfortable silence. Two warriors who'd survived hell. Two teammates who'd lost the man who'd saved them both. Two people trying to figure out how to honor a legacy they could never fully repay. The mission, Hawk said eventually. Volkov, did Bull? I don't know, Maya said honestly. There was an explosion, gunfire, then silence. By the time we extracted, the compound was burning. No way to confirm, but if I know Bull, if I know who he was, then yes, he took Volkov with him. Hawk nodded slowly. 20 years. That's how long Bull carried that grudge. 8 SEALs killed at Fallujah, his knee destroyed, friends lost, and he finally got justice. Justice or revenge, Maya asked. I'm not sure there's a difference anymore. There is, Hawk said. Revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making sure it doesn't happen again. Bull didn't kill Volkov out of anger. He killed him to protect the next generation of warriors. That's justice. Maya wanted to believe that. Wanted to think Bull's last act had been righteous instead of wrathful. But she'd seen his face when he'd recognized Volkov. Seen the cold fury, the absolute certainty that one of them wouldn't leave Syria alive. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe both could be true. Maybe justice and revenge were just two names for the same desperate need to make suffering mean something. I'm glad you're home, Maya said, changing the subject. I've spent 3 years thinking you were dead, carrying that guilt, and now you're here, alive, real. I'm glad you came for me, Hawk said. I held on to hope for 1,095 days. Every morning I'd wake up and tell myself that Phoenix would come, that you'd never leave me behind. And you didn't. Bull didn't, Maya corrected. He's the one who found out you were alive. He's the one who planned the mission. He's the one who made sure we brought you home. But you're the one who executed it, Hawk said. You're the one who held that defensive position for 9 hours to give me time to evacuate. Even if I did end up captured anyway. Maya flinched. That was the guilt she'd been carrying. The knowledge that her 9-hour holdout hadn't been enough. That Hawk had still been captured. That her sacrifice had still failed. Hey, Hawk said, reaching for her hand. That 9-hour holdout saved 12 lives. I wasn't one of them. But 12 other people went home because of what you did. That matters. That's not failure. But I survived, Hawk finished. 3 years in hell, but I survived. Because I'm tough. Because I'm stubborn. Because I knew someday, somehow, you'd figure out I was alive and you'd come for me. And you did. So stop carrying guilt that isn't yours. You did your job, I did mine. Sometimes that's enough. Maya squeezed his hand. When you're recovered, when you're ready, there's something I want to talk to you about. What's that? Bull built something, Maya said, before he died. He designed a leadership program, teaching warriors how to serve with honor, how to come home whole, how to be strong without being cruel. And I'm going to run it. I'm going to take everything he taught me and pass it forward. But I need help. You want me to teach? Hawk asked. I want you to live, Maya said, to show the next generation that survival is possible, that captivity doesn't have to destroy you, that warriors can endure hell and still come back human. Hawk smiled. For the first time since the cell, it reached his eyes. Phoenix, it would be my honor. 2 days later, Fort Liberty held a memorial service for Colonel Thomas Matheson. Maya stood in her quarters an hour before, looking at her dress blues hanging in the closet. She hadn't worn full formal uniform in 3 years, not since she'd gone into hiding, not since she'd decided that being invisible was safer than being seen. But Bull had changed that, had forced her back into the light, had reminded her that her identity as a warrior mattered more than her fear of being known. She dressed slowly, each piece of the uniform a reminder of who she'd been, who she'd become, who she was choosing to be. The Navy Cross went on first. The medal Bull had pinned on her chest himself after Raqqa. She remembered his words that day. This medal isn't for killing 23 enemies. It's for saving 12 friends. Never forget the difference. Then the Silver Star, the Bronze Star with Valor. 3 purple hearts, each one a story, each one a scar, each one proof that she'd served and bled and survived. When she was fully dressed, Maya looked at herself in the mirror. Senior Chief Maya Crane, SEAL Team 4, one of the finest warriors this country had ever produced. Bull's daughter, in every way that mattered. Sarah arrived to escort her, took one look at Maya in full dress blues and smiled. Bull would be so proud. I hope so, Maya said. The chapel was packed. Over 300 people, SEALs from Team 2 and Team 4, Rangers, Marines, support staff, families of warriors Bull had trained over 3 decades of service. Every seat filled, people standing in the aisles, overflow watching from outside on screens. Maya took her seat in the front row. Beside her sat Hawk, in a wheelchair but insisting on attending, Sarah on her other side, Rachel Torres and her mother Elena behind her, Connor Walsh and his father William, Marcus's son Dylan. All the people Bull had touched, all the lives he'd changed. Colonel Mitchell presided, stood at the podium looking out at the assembled crowd with the gravity of a man delivering a eulogy for a legend. "We gather today to honor Colonel Thomas Matheson," Mitchell began. Bull, as everyone called him, a warrior, a leader, a man who spent 30 years in service to this nation. Mitchell spoke of Bull's career: 2 Gulf War tours, 3 Iraq War deployments, the Battle of Fallujah in 2004, where Bull had held a defensive position for 5 hours while wounded, covering an evacuation that saved 8 SEALs. He spoke of Bull's medals: Navy Cross, 2 Silver Stars, Bronze Star with Valor, 3 Purple Hearts, each one earned through blood and sacrifice and the absolute refusal to abandon his teammates. But it was Command Master Chief Isaiah Richardson's eulogy that broke Maya's heart. Richardson was 63 years old, had served with Bull in Iraq, had known him for 20 years, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of friendship and loss. "Bull Matheson made me a promise in 2004, Richardson said. "We were pinned down at Fallujah, surrounded, out of ammunition, 8 of us trapped in a building with hostiles closing in on every side." He paused. Let the weight of that moment settle on the crowd. Bull looked at me and said, "I'm going to get you home, Richardson. That's a promise." And he did. He got all 8 of us out, carried 2 wounded men while bleeding from his own shrapnel wound to his knee, covered our retreat even after taking fire. Richardson's voice broke. "For 20 years, I've carried the weight of that promise. The knowledge that I'm alive because Bull Matheson kept his word. And last week he did it again. Went into Syria to rescue a captured SEAL, gave his life to make sure everyone else made it home." He turned to look at Maya, at Hawk, at Cypher and Shade in the back. Because that's who Bull was, a man who kept his promises, all of them, no matter what it cost. The chapel erupted in applause. People standing, clapping, some crying, all of them understanding that they were witnessing the end of an era, that warriors like Bull Matheson didn't come around often, that when they died, they left holes that could never be filled. Maya stood with them, tears streaming down her face, no longer hiding, no longer ashamed of the grief, just feeling it, letting it wash over her, letting it remind her that love and loss were 2 sides of the same coin. After the service, after the graveside ceremony at Arlington where they honored an empty casket because Bull's body was somewhere in Syria and would never be recovered, Maya stood alone at the memorial marker. "Colonel Thomas Bull Matheson, SEAL Team 2, 1962-2024. The easy days are over, but that's when we do our best work." She touched his name, carved into stone, permanent, real. "I'll make you proud," Maya whispered. "I promise." 1 week later, Maya attended Marcus Vance's court-martial. The military courtroom was smaller than she'd expected, formal, sterile, the kind of place where careers ended and lives changed direction. Marcus sat at the defense table in his dress uniform. No longer staff sergeant, no longer proud, just a man awaiting judgment for actions he couldn't take back. The charges were read: assault on a senior non-commissioned officer, conduct unbecoming, multiple specifications detailing the events of that morning on the range. The slap, the CQC pit attack, the pattern of bullying and intimidation. Marcus pled guilty to all charges. Didn't try to defend his actions. Didn't make excuses. Just stood and accepted responsibility in a voice that barely carried across the courtroom. The prosecution presented their case: video footage from the range, witness testimony from 97 personnel who'd watched Marcus strike Maya, medical documentation of her injuries, a clear, undeniable record of guilt. But it was the defense's presentation that caught Maya's attention. Marcus's lawyer was a captain named Jennifer Hollis, 36 years old, Judge Advocate General's Corps. She stood and addressed the panel with the careful precision of someone who knew her client was guilty, but believed he deserved a chance anyway. "Members of the panel, my client has pled guilty to all charges. He accepts full responsibility for his actions. He offers no excuses, no justifications. He understands that what he did was wrong, illegal, unbecoming of a soldier. She paused. But I ask you to consider context, not as mitigation, but as understanding. Marcus Vance is the son of Thomas Vance, SEAL Team 2, served with Colonel Matheson at Fallujah in 2004, came home with a silver star and psychological wounds that never healed. Captain Hollis pulled out a photograph, showed it to the panel. This is Marcus at age 12. This is the day he found his father dead in their garage. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Suicide. The result of 7 years of untreated PTSD from Iraq. Maya's chest tightened. She'd known Thomas Vance had died by suicide, hadn't known Marcus had been the one to find him. For 22 years, Marcus has been running from that memory, Captain Hollis continued, terrified of becoming his father, overcompensating with aggression and certainty, and the absolute conviction that showing weakness would lead to the same ending. He was wrong. His methods were wrong. His treatment of Senior Chief Crane was inexcusable. She turned to look at Marcus. But he's not his father. He's not defined by one terrible mistake. He's a soldier who served 3 tours in Iraq, who led men in combat, who came home and tried to teach the next generation. He failed in that teaching, failed spectacularly. But failure doesn't have to be final. The panel deliberated for 47 minutes. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all charges. The sentence, reduction to private, general discharge under other than honorable conditions, 18 months confinement, but with one modification based on the defense's request and Maya's testimony recommending leniency. The final 6 months would be served as an ethics instructor at the disciplinary barracks, teaching soldiers facing courts-martial about honor, accountability, and the difference between strength and cruelty. A chance to become who his father had wanted him to be. After the verdict, Marcus approached Maya in the hallway. 2 MPs flanked him, ready to escort him to confinement. His face was composed, but his eyes were grateful. "Thank you," he said it quietly, "for the testimony, for the recommendation. I don't deserve your mercy." "It's not mercy," Maya said. "It's opportunity. What you do with it is up to you." Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out an envelope. "I found this in my father's belongings after he died. I never understood it until now. I think you should have it." Maya opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, yellowed paper, written in shaky handwriting that spoke of trauma barely contained. "Dear Bull, I never got to thank you properly for Fallujah, for carrying me out when I was hit, for saving my life. The doctors say I'll walk again. My wife says I'll heal. But I know better. Something broke in me over there, something the war took that I'll never get back. I have a son now, Marcus, 2 years old, beautiful kid, smart, strong. I want to be a good father to him, want to teach him what you taught me. That strength protects. That warriors serve, but I'm afraid, Bull. Afraid that the broken parts of me will break him too. Afraid that I'll teach him to be hard instead of strong. Cruel instead of courageous. If anything happens to me, if the darkness wins, please look after my boy. Teach him what I couldn't. Make him the warrior I should have been. Your brother in arms, Thomas Vance, April 15, 2005. Maya read the letter twice, felt the weight of it, the prophecy that had come true. The father who'd known he was broken but had tried anyway. The plea for help that had never been sent. Bull never received this, Maya said. I don't think my father ever had the courage to send it, Marcus said. He kept it in a box of things he meant to do but never did. Projects started but never finished. Promises made but never kept. But you're keeping it now, Maya said, by serving your sentence, by teaching ethics, by becoming the man your father wanted you to be. Trying to, Marcus said. That's all any of us can do. Try to be better than we were yesterday. He was escorted away. Maya stood in the hallway holding the letter, thinking about fathers and sons and the weight of legacies that could heal or destroy depending on how they were carried. That night, alone in her quarters, Maya finally opened Bull's journal completely. She'd read pieces of it before, but never from the beginning, never with the intention of understanding the full scope of what Bull had tried to teach her. The first entry was dated June 15, 2012, the day Bull had retired after 30 years of service. Retired today, 30 years, 2 wars, Gulf and Iraq. Too many friends lost, too many close calls. My knee aches where the shrapnel hit at Fallujah. My shoulder remembers every round I've fired. My mind remembers every face of every warrior who didn't make it home. But I keep asking myself, did I make a difference? Then I think about the young warriors I've trained. Maya, most of all, my best friend's daughter, the girl I raised after James died in Kandahar. I think about the skills I've taught her, the values I've instilled, the lessons about strength, serving instead of dominating. And I realize that's the answer. That's how we make a difference. We don't serve for glory. We don't serve for recognition. We serve so the next generation can serve better, so they can learn from our mistakes, so they can build something better than what we left them. That's the legacy. That's what matters. Pass it on. Maya closed the journal, sat in silence, let Bull's words settle into her bones. For 3 years, she'd been hiding, pretending that being invisible was safer than being seen. But Bull had forced her back into the light, had reminded her that her identity mattered, that her skills mattered, that she had a responsibility to pass forward what she'd learned. And now, sitting alone with his journal and his legacy and the weight of his absence, Maya understood what came next. She would teach, would build the leadership program Bull had designed, would take 30 years of his wisdom and 18 years of her experience and create something that honored both her fathers, James Crane, who died in Kandahar, and Bull Matheson, who died in Syria. Both of them warriors, both of them teachers, both of them believing that the next generation deserved better than what they'd been given. Maya pulled out a notebook, started writing. The Matheson Leadership Center, named after Bull, funded by the military but inspired by his vision, teaching warriors how to serve with honor, how to come home whole, how to be strong without being cruel. 6-month program, 30 trainees per class, focus on mental health, ethical leadership, and the values that made warriors into something more than just people with guns. She wrote for 2 hours, planning, designing, building something that would outlast her grief. And when she finally stopped, when the plan was complete, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The easy days were over. The hard days were just beginning. But Maya Crane was ready, because that's what Bull had taught her, that the hard days were where legends were born, and she was going to build some legends. 6 months had passed since Bull's death. 6 months since Maya had accepted the position as chief instructor for the Combined Joint Special Operations Training Command. 6 months of building something from grief and loss and the desperate need to make his sacrifice mean something. The Matheson Leadership Center stood on the eastern edge of Fort Liberty. New construction, modern facilities, but designed with the kind of functional simplicity that Bull would have appreciated. No frills, no wasted space, just everything a warrior needed to learn what it meant to serve with honor. Maya stood in the main training hall at 0530, 30 minutes before her first class would arrive, 30 minutes to center herself, to remember why she was doing this, to feel Bull's presence in the building that bore his name. The walls were bare except for one thing, a plaque near the entrance, bronze letters on black marble. Colonel Thomas Bull Matheson, SEAL Team 2, 1962-2024. The easy days are over, but that's when we do our best work. Maya touched the plaque every morning. Ritual, remembrance, a promise renewed that she would honor what he'd built by building something even better. The door opened. Hawk entered, walking without the cane now, his body recovered from 3 years of captivity, his mind still processing but healing. He'd taken the position as deputy instructor, not because he needed the job, but because he understood what Maya was trying to do and wanted to help. "Morning," Hawk said, handing her coffee. "You ready for this?" "No," Maya said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." "That's the spirit," Hawk said with a slight smile. Bull would be proud, terrified and proud. Why terrified? Because you're about to take 30 soldiers and remake them in your image. That's a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility, a lot of ways to fail. "Thanks for the pep talk," Maya said dryly. "You don't need pep talks," Hawk replied. "You need honesty. And the honest truth is that you're going to change lives today, some for the better, some in ways you can't predict. But you're going to matter." That's what Bull understood. That's what he wanted for you. The first soldier arrived at 0555, early, eager. Maya recognized her immediately. Rachel Torres, specialist, 24 years old. The young woman who'd asked Maya to train her for Special Forces selection, who'd been waiting 6 months for this program to start. "Senior Chief," Rachel said, standing at attention. "Reporting for training." "At ease, Specialist," Maya said. "You're 5 minutes early." "I've been waiting 6 months, Senior Chief. Didn't want to risk being late." Over the next 5 minutes, 29 more soldiers arrived. Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, enlisted and officers, young and old, all of them volunteers, all of them here because they wanted to learn what it meant to be the kind of warrior Bull Matheson had been. Maya studied them, saw determination, saw fear, saw the same desperate desire to prove themselves that she'd felt at their age. Among them, Connor Walsh, the corporal with PTSD who Maya had helped 6 months ago. Dylan Vance, Marcus's son, trying to break a family curse. 28 others, each with their own stories, each seeking something they couldn't quite name. At 0600 exactly, Maya stepped to the front of the room. My name is Senior Chief Maya Crane, SEAL Team 4. For the next 6 months, I'm going to teach you things the military doesn't normally teach. Not tactics, not weapons. Those things matter, but you can learn them anywhere. What I'm going to teach you is harder. How to serve with honor, how to lead with compassion, how to be strong without being cruel, how to come home from war and still be whole. She paused. Let the words settle. This program was designed by Colonel Thomas Matheson, the man this building is named after. He was my father. Not by blood, but by choice. He raised me, trained me, made me who I am, and before he died, he made me promise something. He made me promise to pass on everything he'd taught me, to build the next generation of warriors, to make sure you're better than we were. Maya pulled Bull's journal from her bag, held it up so everyone could see. This journal contains 30 years of lessons. Everything Bull learned from 2 Gulf War tours and 3 Iraq War deployments. Every mistake, every success, every hard-won piece of wisdom. Over the next 6 months, we're going to work through it together, page by page, lesson by lesson. And when you graduate, you'll carry forward what he spent a lifetime learning. She opened to a marked page, read aloud. Lesson 1. Service isn't about you. It's about the people you protect, the teammates you support, the mission you complete. The moment you make it about you, about your glory or your recognition or your ego, you've already failed. Warriors serve others. That's what makes us warriors instead of just soldiers with guns. Maya closed the journal, looked at the 30 faces staring back at her. So let me ask you a question. Why are you here? What do you hope to learn? And most importantly, who are you trying to become? Silence. Then a hand raised. Connor Walsh, the young man with PTSD who Maya had helped 6 months ago, who told her she'd saved his life without knowing it. I'm here because I wanted to be the kind of soldier who saves people instead of just killing enemies. I want to learn how to serve without losing myself, how to be strong enough to be kind. Good answer, Maya said. Anyone else? Another hand. Dylan Vance, Marcus's son, the young man who had asked Maya to train him after his father's court-martial, who carried the weight of his family's broken history and wanted to write a better ending. I'm here because my grandfather died broken from Iraq. My father nearly did the same, and I want to prove that the Vance name can mean something good again, that warriors don't have to destroy themselves to be effective. Maya felt something catch in her throat. Bull had known these two would be here, had probably planned for it, had understood that broken things could be fixed if you gave them the right environment to heal. Both good answers, Maya said. Now let me tell you what I hope for you. I hope you fail. Often. I hope you struggle. I hope you face challenges that make you want to quit, because that's where growth happens. Not in success, but in how you handle failure. She walked down the line, making eye contact with each soldier. Bull used to say something. He said the easy days are over, but that's when we do our best work. That's going to be our motto here, because I'm not interested in making your lives easy. I'm interested in making you strong, resilient, capable of handling whatever the world throws at you. The weeks that followed were brutal. Maya pushed the trainees harder than they'd ever been pushed. Not physically, though the PT sessions were intense, but mentally, emotionally, forcing them to examine why they served, what they believed, who they wanted to become. She used Bull's journal as the foundation. Each lesson a jumping-off point for discussion, for debate, for the kind of deep thinking that the military often discouraged because thinking soldiers were harder to control than obedient ones. But Maya didn't want obedient soldiers. She wanted warriors who understood what they were fighting for. Week 3 brought the first major challenge, a field exercise designed to test leadership under stress. The trainees were divided into teams of 5, each team given a mission: rescue a downed pilot from hostile territory, limited resources, time pressure, No clear right answer. Maya and Hawk observed from a distance, watching, taking notes, seeing who stepped up and who fell apart. Dylan Vance's team moved cautiously, too cautiously, wasting time on planning when action was required. Dylan recognized it, called an audible, shifted tactics mid-mission, got his team to the objective with minutes to spare. Rachel Torres' team went the opposite direction, aggressive, fast, but reckless. They reached the objective quickly but left one team member behind, failed to maintain security, completed the mission but at a cost that would have been unacceptable in real combat. After the exercise, Maya gathered everyone together. Lesson learned, she asked. Dylan spoke first. Planning matters, but adaptability matters more. We wasted time trying to have the perfect plan when a good enough plan, executed immediately, would have been better. Good, Maya said. Torres, what about your team? Rachel's face was tight with frustration. We moved too fast, left someone behind. In real combat, that person dies. The mission succeeds, but we lose a teammate. That's not acceptable. Why not? Maya challenged. You completed the objective, saved the pilot, mission accomplished. Because warriors don't leave people behind, Rachel said, her voice firm despite the emotion. Ever, that's not negotiable. Maya felt pride swell in her chest. Correct. Let me tell you a story. Raqqa, 2019. My team was extracting from a compromised position. One of our teammates, Hawk, was covering our retreat. The building collapsed. We thought he was dead. But I made a choice. I held position for 9 hours. Alone, boy, with a collapsed lung. Because I refused to leave until I knew for certain he was gone. She gestured to Hawk. Turns out he wasn't dead. He was captured, spent 3 years in a cell, and when I found out he was alive, I went back for him. Because that's what warriors do. We don't leave people behind, even when leaving them would be easier, even when going back might cost everything. The trainees absorbed this in silence. That's the lesson, Maya continued. Mission success means nothing if you sacrifice your teammates to achieve it. We protect each other first, complete the mission second, and if we have to choose, we always choose our people. Week 6 brought a different kind of challenge, psychological. Maya brought in Dr. Martinez, the physician who treated her after the Syria mission, who understood trauma and resilience and what it took to survive the things warriors experienced. Dr. Martinez spoke to the class about PTSD, about moral injury, about the cost of violence and the weight of decisions made under impossible circumstances. She was honest, brutal, didn't sugarcoat the reality that some of them would come home broken. The question isn't whether you'll be affected, Dr. Martinez said. It's whether you'll seek help when you are, whether you'll have the courage to admit you're struggling, whether you'll trust your teammates enough to be vulnerable. Connor spoke up. I have PTSD from Afghanistan. For a long time, I thought it made me weak, thought it meant I'd failed somehow. But Senior Chief Crane taught me something. She taught me that acknowledging pain is strength, not weakness. That asking for help is courage, not cowardice. He looked at Maya. 6 months ago, I was sitting in my car with a loaded weapon, ready to end it. But I remembered something she said, that the target isn't the enemy, that my brain was making threats out of memories that couldn't hurt me anymore. And I chose to live, to get help, to become someone who could help others. The room was silent, every soldier understanding the weight of what Connor had just shared. Maya stood, walked to the front. Thank you for sharing that, Connor. That took courage, real courage, the kind that matters more than any combat valor. She turned to address the class. Let me be clear about something. This program isn't just about making you better warriors. It's about making sure you survive being warriors, that you come home whole, that you have the tools to process what you experience, that you know you're not alone. Week 12 marked the halfway point. The trainees had lost weight, gained muscle, developed a cohesion that came from shared suffering and shared growth. They moved like a unit now, thought like a team, supported each other instinctively. Maya gathered them in the training hall. You've come a long way. 12 weeks ago, you were individuals. Now you're a team. But there's one more evolution I need to put you through, one more test before we continue. She pulled out 30 envelopes, one for each trainee. Inside these envelopes is a letter from someone in your life, a family member, a friend, someone who knows why you're here and what you're trying to become. You're going to read these letters. Then you're going to share what they say, not the whole thing, just the part that matters most. The trainees opened their envelopes. Some smiled, some cried, some sat in stunned silence. Rachel Torres went first. "This is from my mother. She says, Mija, I was afraid when you joined the military. Afraid I'd lose you like we lost your brother. But watching you grow, watching you become someone who protects instead of destroys, that makes me proud. You're doing what Carlos couldn't. You're coming home whole." Rachel's voice broke. "My brother died in Fallujah, 2004, IED. He was 19. And I joined because I wanted to understand what he'd experienced, what he died for, but I didn't want to die like him. I wanted to live, to serve, to come home." Maya felt tears in her own eyes. "Thank you for sharing that, Rachel. Your brother would be proud." Dylan Vance was next. "This is from my father, Marcus Vance. He's at the disciplinary barracks, serving his sentence, teaching ethics to soldiers facing courts-martial. But he writes, 'Son, I failed you in a lot of ways. Let my fear make me cruel. Let my pain make me a bully. But you're breaking that cycle. You're becoming the man I should have been, the man your grandfather wanted to be before the war broke him. I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner.'" Dylan wiped his eyes. "My dad's getting out in 3 months. He's going to keep teaching, help other soldiers avoid his mistakes. And I think maybe we can have a relationship again. Not the broken one we had before, but something better." Maya walked over, put her hand on Dylan's shoulder. "Bull used to say that broken things can be fixed. Your father is proving that, and so are you." One by one, the trainees shared their letters. Stories of sacrifice and support, of families worried but proud, of loved ones who understood the cost of service and paid it anyway. When they finished, Maya pulled out her own letter. "Bull left this for me before he died. I'm going to read you part of it." She opened the worn paper, Bull's handwriting still clear despite the months that had passed. "Maya, if you're reading this to a room full of trainees, you've done what I asked. You've taken the pain and the loss and turned it into purpose. That's not easy. It's the hardest thing in the world. But it's also the most important. Because legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we build in others. You're building warriors who understand that strength serves, that power protects, that service means sacrifice. That's my legacy. And now it's yours too." Maya folded the letter. "Bull died 6 months ago in Syria, covering my extraction from a rescue mission. He chose to stand and fight instead of run, chose to face an old enemy instead of live a few more months in safety. And I was angry about that for a long time, angry that he'd chosen to leave me." She looked at the 30 faces watching her. "But I understand now. He didn't choose to leave. He chose to protect. He chose to die doing what he had always done, saving the people he loved. And his death, as much as it hurt, gave me the push I needed to become this, to build this, to honor him by teaching you." The room was silent except for the sound of breathing and the occasional sniffle as trainees processed what they'd heard. "That's the lesson," Maya said quietly. "We serve not because it's easy, but because it matters. Because the next generation deserves teachers who will be honest about the cost, who will prepare them for reality instead of selling them fantasy, who will build them up instead of breaking them down." The final 6 weeks flew by. The trainees pushed through advanced scenarios. Ethical dilemmas, leadership challenges designed to test not just their skills, but their character. Maya watched them grow, watched Rachel develop into a leader who inspired instead of commanded, watched Dylan embrace the weight of his family name and carry it with pride instead of shame, watched Connor transform from a soldier fighting his demons into a mentor helping others fight theirs. All 30 of them, each one changing, each one becoming more than they'd been when they started. Graduation day arrived. The ceremony was held outdoors, 200 people in attendance, family, friends, fellow soldiers, Colonel Mitchell presiding as reviewing officer. The 30 graduates stood in formation, dress uniforms pressed to perfection, pride evident in every line of their bearing. They'd started as individuals. They were ending as a team. Mitchell spoke first. 6 months ago, Colonel Thomas Matheson had a vision. He saw a military that was strong but also wise, powerful but also compassionate, capable of violence but choosing peace whenever possible. He designed this program to create warriors who understood that strength serves others, that power protects the vulnerable, that service means sacrifice. He gestured to Maya. And he chose Senior Chief Maya Crane to lead it, not because she was the strongest, not because she was the most decorated, but because she understood in her bones what it meant to serve with honor, what it cost to be a warrior, what it took to come home whole. Mitchell paused. These 30 soldiers have spent 6 months learning what most soldiers never learn. They've learned that asking for help is strength, that vulnerability is courage, that the true measure of a warrior isn't how much they can destroy, but how much they can protect. He turned to the graduates. You are the first class of the Matheson Leadership Program. You set the standard. You established the culture. You proved that Bull's vision was right, that we can build better warriors by teaching them to be better humans first. Hawk spoke next. As deputy instructor, he'd earned the right to address the class. I spent 3 years in a cell, captured, isolated, forgotten by everyone except one person. Senior Chief Crane never stopped looking for me, never stopped believing I was alive. And when she found out I was, she crossed half the world to bring me home. That's what warriors do. We don't leave people behind, ever. He looked at the graduates. You've learned that lesson over the past 6 months. You've learned that your teammates matter more than the mission. That service means sacrifice. That strength without compassion is just violence. Take those lessons forward, into your units, into your careers, into your lives. And when the world tries to make you hard and cruel and cold, remember what you learned here. Remember that you're better than that. Then it was Maya's turn. She stood before the graduates, before the families, before the legacy Bull had built and she was carrying forward. 6 months ago, I stood in this same spot and told you I was going to teach you things the military doesn't normally teach. I told you it would be hard, that you'd fail, that you'd struggle, and you did all of those things. But you also succeeded. You grew. You became more than you were. Maya pulled out Bull's journal. This journal contains 30 years of wisdom. We've worked through it together, page by page, lesson by lesson, and now you carry that wisdom forward. You're not Bull's students anymore. You're his legacy, the proof that what he believed, what he taught, what he died for, it all mattered. She opened to the final page. Read the last entry Bull had ever written. If you're reading this, you've completed the program. You've learned everything I spent 30 years learning, and now comes the hard part. Living it, applying it, making it real in a world that often rewards the opposite. But you can do it. I know you can, because I've seen what happens when good people commit to being better. When warriors choose compassion over cruelty, when strength serves instead of dominates, you're going to change the world. One choice at a time, one person at a time, one life at a time. The easy days are over, but you were born for the hard ones. Now go prove it. Maya closed the journal. That's Bull's final message to you. And here's mine. You are warriors, but you're also human. Don't forget that. Don't let the world make you hard. Don't let the violence change who you are at your core. Stay connected to the people you love. Ask for help when you need it. And remember that serving others is the highest calling. Not serving a mission, not serving a command, but serving the people who need protection. The vulnerable, the forgotten, the ones who can't fight for themselves. She stepped back, saluted the formation. You've made me proud. You've made Bull proud. Now go make the world better. The graduates saluted back, 30 voices speaking as one. The easy days are over. And Maya, standing before them with tears streaming down her face, replied with the line Bull had taught her 18 years ago. But the hard days are where legends are born. The ceremony ended. Families rushed forward to embrace their soldiers. Tears and laughter mixing together in the celebration of accomplishment. Maya stood to the side, watching, taking it all in. This was Bull's dream realized, his vision made real, and she'd been the one to build it. Rachel Torres found her first. But Rachel wasn't alone. She had an older woman with her. Gray hair, kind eyes, the same determined chin as her daughter. Senior Chief, Rachel said, this is my mother, Elena. Mom, this is Senior Chief Crane. Elena pulled Maya into a hug before she could protest. Thank you for teaching my daughter, for keeping her safe, for showing her that she can serve without losing herself like Carlos did. Carlos? Maya asked. My son, Elena said, tears in her eyes. Rachel's brother. He died in Fallujah in 2004, 19 years old, IED. He came home in a box because no one taught him that asking for help was okay. that admitting you're struggling isn't weakness. She gripped Maya's shoulders. But you taught Rachel that. You taught her that warriors can be whole, that service doesn't have to destroy you. And for that, I will be grateful every day of my life. Dylan Vance approached next, and beside him stood a man Maya recognized immediately. Marcus Vance, no longer in uniform. Civilian clothes, thinner than he'd been 6 months ago, but standing taller, moving with quiet dignity instead of aggressive arrogance. Senior Chief, Marcus said. He stood at attention out of habit. Permission to speak? Granted, Maya said. And it's good to see you, Marcus. I completed my sentence last week, Marcus said. General discharge. Not honorable, but not dishonorable either. And I wanted to be here to see Dylan graduate, to see what you've built. He looked around at the Matheson Leadership Center, at the memorial wall, at the 30 graduates celebrating with their families. This is what I should have been building, Marcus continued, voice thick with emotion. Instead of tearing people down, instead of being cruel, I wasted years trying to prove I was strong when real strength was right here all along. You're building it now, Maya said, at the disciplinary barracks, teaching ethics, helping soldiers avoid your mistakes. That matters. Connor Walsh was last, and with him came an older man, late 60s, weathered face, the kind of stillness that came from having seen too much. Senior Chief, Connor said, this is my father, Master Sergeant William Walsh, retired, Army Rangers, Gulf War. William extended his hand. Maya shook it, felt the firm grip of a man who'd once been a warrior and still remembered how. My son tells me you saved his life, William said bluntly. Twice. Once on the range when you taught him breathing techniques. Once in his car when you gave him a reason to live. Is that true? I gave him tools, Maya said. Connor did the rest himself. That's not what he says, William replied. He says you saw him when everyone else looked away. That you understood what he was going through because you'd been there yourself. That you treated his PTSD like an injury worth healing instead of a weakness to hide. William's voice cracked. I came home from Iraq in '91 with nightmares I never talked about. Rage I never dealt with. Pain I never acknowledged. I taught my son that real men don't cry. Don't ask for help. Don't admit weakness. And I almost killed him with that teaching. He turned to Connor. I'm sorry, son, for teaching you wrong, for making you think you had to suffer alone. Connor embraced his father, both men crying, both men breaking through decades of taught silence and learned stoicism. It's okay, Dad, Connor said. We're both getting better now. Both learning. That evening, after the families had left and the graduates had dispersed, Maya walked to the memorial wall they'd built on the grounds. Black granite, gold lettering, listing the names of fallen warriors from SEAL Team 2 and Team 4. At the top, larger than the others, was Bull's name. Colonel Thomas Bull, Matheson, SEAL Team 2, 1962 to 2024. The easy days are over, but that's when we do our best work. Maya placed her hand on the cold stone. We did it, Bull. First class graduated. 30 warriors who understand what you taught me, who'll carry your legacy forward. The evening was quiet, just wind and the distant sound of soldiers training. But Maya felt something. Not Bull's voice, not a ghost, just a presence, a knowing, a certainty that somewhere, somehow he was watching. And he was proud. Colonel Mitchell told me something today, Maya said to the stone. The program is expanding. 3 more training centers, Fort Benning, Camp Pendleton, Naval Station Norfolk, 12 more instructors, capacity for 200 trainees per year. She pulled out the challenge coin, the one Bull had given her when she graduated SEAL training. On one side, the eagle and trident. On the other, 3 names now. Her father's, Hawks, and now engraved fresh, Bull's. There's something else, Maya continued. The Matheson Foundation. Bull, you established it 6 months before you died. $5 million. Dedicated to supporting veterans' mental health programs, family services, and leadership training. You planned this, built infrastructure that would outlast you, made sure your impact would continue long after you were gone. She closed her fist around the coin. Thank you for everything, for raising me, for pushing me, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself, for giving your life to make sure I found mine, for planning all of this, for building something that will save lives for generations. Sarah Chen appeared from behind her. Maya turned, saw her friend of 21 years carrying a thermos and 2 cups. Thought I'd find you here, Sarah said. She handed Maya coffee, still hot. You always know where to find me, Maya said. 21 years of friendship, Sarah replied. I know your patterns. They sat together on the bench facing the memorial wall, drinking coffee, watching the stars emerge. You did good today, Sarah said. Really good. Those 30 kids, they're different now. Better because of what you taught them. Because of what Bull taught me, Maya corrected. Because of what you chose to do with what Bull taught you, Sarah said. You could have stayed hidden, could have refused the position, could have let grief consume you. But you didn't. You built something, and that's all you. Not Bull, you. Maya considered this. Rachel's coming back after Special Forces qualification. Connor's staying on as full instructor. Dylan when he's ready. Hawk's already here. I'm not doing this alone. No, Sarah agreed. You're building a team, just like Bull taught you, just like your father would have wanted. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only decades of friendship could create. I miss him, Maya admitted. Every day, every lesson, every moment when I need his wisdom and he's not here to give it. He's here, Sarah said, in the building that bears his name, in the journal you teach from, in every graduate who leaves here knowing that strength serves. That's immortality, Maya. Not in monuments, but in the difference we make. Maya stood, touched Bull's name one final time. The easy days are over, but the hard days, Sarah finished, are where legends are born. Maya returned to her office. On the desk sat Bull's journal, worn from 6 months of use, filled with wisdom that had transformed 30 lives and would transform hundreds more. Beside it sat a new journal, empty, waiting. Maya picked up a pen, opened to the first page, started writing. Lesson 1, service isn't about you. Bull taught me that, but let me add something he implied. Service is about seeing people who are invisible, who suffer in silence, who need someone to notice. Your job as a warrior isn't just to fight enemies. It's to protect the vulnerable, to lift up the fallen, to make sure no one suffers alone. That's what Bull did for me, what I'm doing for you, what you'll do for the next generation. The legacy continues, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one life at a time. Senior Chief Maya Crane Matheson, Leadership Center, Year 1. Maya wrote for an hour, filling pages with her own lessons, her own experiences, building on Bull's foundation with her own insights. This was how legacy worked, not by repeating what had been done, but by adding to it, improving it, making it relevant for the next generation. Bull had given her the foundation. Now she was building the structure, and someday one of her students would build on what she'd created, adding their wisdom, their experiences, their truth. That's how it would continue, forever. As long as warriors needed teachers, and teachers remembered that their job was to build better humans before building better soldiers. The easy days were over, but Maya Crane was just getting started. And somewhere in the place where warriors went when they died, Thomas Bull Matheson and Lieutenant Commander James Crane stood together, watching their daughter, their student, their legacy made real. And they were smiling, because the hard days were where legends were born, and Maya Crane was a legend in the making. The end.